Go Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution, and our condolences to the families of those killed in this plane crash. Very mysterious what we finna look at. Military Black Hawk crashes right into a passenger plane in D.C. Who's on this plane? What the hell is going on here? But let's take a look at this video. Before we get into that, y'all be sure to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. You know, revolution is for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I got some late night revolutionary dinner for y'all.
Been listening right now to WTTG. We're now taking over to show you this. This is video from the Kennedy.
What y'all gonna be seeing on this video is when the helicopter, and it's one of the videos I see a lot of videos like not gonna be showing this. The helicopter is gonna be coming from left to right. It's very small. Now, what I don't know is what was this helicopter? Is this a drone helicopter? Was it actually any people actually in that helicopter? And I'm absolutely wondering who was on this plane that this military helicopter crashed into.
Now to WTTG, we're now taking over to show you this. This is video from the Kennedy Center camera, and you see that explosion right there. That is the moment when this small plane apparently crashed into a helicopter. You see a fireball, and then, Marla, we see that plane head down towards the Potomac River.
So is it?
Oh, what an image there. And according to our sister station in DC, WTTG, that in fact is confirmed that a small aircraft collided with a helicopter. They were hearing that it is not a DC police helicopter, and colleagues on the ground say that several people were saying that it was a military helicopter. That information is not confirmed, but according to our sister station in DC, Fox 5 there, they have confirmed that it is a helicopter and a small aircraft that has collided. Again, this is courtesy of the Kennedy Center, the moment of impact.
Yeah.
All right, who was on that helicopter? I mean, not the helicopter, because the helicopter, military helicopter. Who was on that plane? Revolutionary salute, Queen. My condolences to the families of the people on this plane. But this military helicopter, we really have to look at. Hold on, do I want this here now? Let's go. Hold on, we'll get to that in a second. Who was on this? They need to let us know who was on this plane that crashed. Don't hold that list back from the people. You know, why did y'all target this plane right here? Military Black Hawk do not just crash in the planes. Salute, family, we in here. Come on, man. How stupid do they really think we are? See, we wondering who on the plane, who was on the plane that crashed into the Potomac River. That's what we want to know. Who was on this plane? Because somebody in Washington, D.C., and didn't it happen in Washington, D.C.? Oh, Lord. Who didn't want these people alive?
Some breaking news this hour as a small plane has just crashed into the Potomac River here in Washington near the Ronald Reagan Airport.
Not true. See, that's how you catch them at the beginning of the lie. No, a small plane did not crash. A Black Hawk, that's a weapon of war, U.S. military helicopter crashed into that plane and brought that plane down, ma'am. That's what you should have said.
Airport just outside Washington, D.C. That's according to the D.C. Fire Department. As you can see here, fireboats are now on the scene. And Reagan National Airport says that all takeoffs and landings from the airport have been halted for now as emergency personnel are responding to the situation that is unfolding. We're just learning new details, and I want to get to CNN's Pete Muntean. Pete, first off, what can you tell us? What do we know about the size of this aircraft or just what happened here?
This is developing by the moment, Caitlin, and it sounds, at least according to the preliminary data from Flight Radar 24, one of the big flight tracking sites, that this may have been a regional jet operated by PSA Airlines that would have been a code share with American Airlines, meaning you buy a ticket on American, the flight is operated by PSA. This flight was apparently on its way from Wichita, Kansas to DCA, Reagan National Airport, just over the DC line in Virginia. Apparently about 8:48 Eastern Standard Time is when this flight was scheduled to arrive, according to the latest flight tracking data. And apparently there was some sort of incident. You can see in the live image there. This is from our DC bureau in Northeast DC, looking across the Potomac River, so looking essentially southwest towards Reagan National Airport. All the flashing lights of the police response and all
saw the incident, brother. Why did that U.S. military weapon of war Black Hawk crash into that plane? That's a hell of an incident.
So the DC fire boats there in the Potomac River. The good news here is that this is, we have broken the cold streak here in DC. So the water temperatures are not as frigid as they were. It was a relatively warm day here in Washington, DC. So that will aid rescuers and response crews as they're trying to get to the scene. But Reagan National Airport, one of the busiest airports in the country. Apparently this flight, according to the flight tracking data, was coming in from the south. That's called the Mount Vernon approach into Reagan National Airport, landing on runway 1 at Reagan National Airport, which is to the north. That's the busiest single runway in the national airspace system. A lot of folks still finding out.
That's your frivolous misinformation. Well, brother, could you tell us why the U.S. military Black Hawk hit that plane? All this misinformation about where it took off from, it's not about where it took off from. It got hit in the sky, brother. And why was that U.S. military vehicle? Don't ever in your life think a U.S. Black Hawk is just flying around blind and accidentally ramming into shit. Are they think we nuts? That is an advanced weapon of war, plenty of radar systems. It ran right into it. Come on now.
Out about this. We have calls out to the Federal Aviation Administration, the National Transportation Safety Board, American Airlines, and beyond. Right now, we're just getting very
terrorist attack. How long are they going to take them to terror? Remember the last 2 terrorist attacks, ex-U.S. military. How long is it going to take for y'all to tell us that these people was also at the base that the other guys were at? You see, I want you to remember, U.S. military Black Hawk crashed into a passenger plane. Let's start right there.
Very early preliminary information from the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority itself, which operates Reagan National Airport. They say there is an incident at the airport right now, but things are still developing all the time. And we're trying to figure out exactly what the circumstances were here. If this was a crash of a commercial airliner, that has not happened in the United States in about 15 years.
It's crazy, bro. If I hadn't just showed y'all the other video to start with of the helicopter crashing into the plane, you wouldn't even know that. Why? They already trying to erase it from the files? Why is CNN lying to people like this plane just crashed into the goddamn Potomac by itself like it wasn't hit by a weapon of war, a U.S. military Black Hawk plane? Nah, it's damn sure suspicious. Since y'all want to do this, we definitely got to look into this.
Major crash of a commercial airliner in the U.S. was the Colgan Air crash of 2009, left an indelible mark on aviation, left sweeping regulatory changes that are still being dealt with in aviation to this day. It is a really, really, really busy slice of airspace. And I can tell you, as a pilot, as a flight instructor, as somebody who has a small airplane, an airport not too far away from Reagan National Airport, it is a very restricted piece of airspace, but it's also very busy with commercial traffic, also very busy with helicopters, not only from local law enforcement, but also military and government agencies. We just saw in DC, if you've ever spent a long time in the District of Columbia, you know that helicopters are a way of life here. So there are some now big questions here about the busyness of the airspace and what exactly took place here. We don't want to speculate. We want to rule things out. But right now, we're just finding out very preliminary information about what has taken place here at Reagan National Airport.
We seen that helicopter ram into we seen that helicopter ram into that plane, bro. Y'all, and it's all over the internet now.
Report very clearly an incident, and very clearly an incident with an incredible police and fire response.
And just on the helicopters, I mean, there's literally a Twitter account dedicated to what helicopters flying where, because there are so many flying in U.S. airspace. Marine One flies over the Potomac, to be clear, as well. That's that flight pattern. But on this plane specifically, is it a passenger plane? And if so, how many passengers does it fit exactly?
This is what we think, according to the preliminary flight tracking data. And I'm going to underscore again and again, this is preliminary. That this flight was a Canadair regional jet. As I'm just going to pull up the data again. A CRJ is what they're called. You've probably been on them before. They operate the regional flights for major airlines between smaller airports and larger airports. They're a very common sight at Reagan National Airport. It looks like this was a CRJ 700. So that is a larger, longer regional jet. Seats about 60 or 70 people or so. I'd have to check on it. I'm sure somebody will also check me on that who's watching right now. So this could be potentially very significant. And if this involves indeed a commercial flight, and that's what the preliminary flight.
This is disgusting, bro. You ran your ass on TV. You know exactly. You better tell us who was on that plane. All this bullshit. Oh, I'm just getting information on what type of plane it was. Man, you know who the hell. You know how many people was on that plane? What's wrong with you, boy? Why did the U.S. military Black Hawk crash into that damn plane? That's what we want to know. Are you finna tell us this dude had mental health issues? All right, we get right to it here. Okay, the dude had mental health issues. I guess he didn't like Trump coming to power, so he decided to ram his. Oh, a Biden supporter, you say?
Flight tracking data says that this flight was on approach into Reagan National Airport, approaching from the south to the north on the Mount Vernon approach, initially landing on runway 1, and then potentially, according to the flight data, did a swing around maneuver where they sort of swing over the Maryland side of the Potomac and then line up with a northwesterly runway called runway 33. That's a pretty common thing for these smaller regional jets to do. It's something, a maneuver that can be very tricky at times. This, of course, happened at night, which makes things a bit more complicated, not only for the pilots who were flying this airplane, but also for rescuers. It is very, very dark on the Potomac. And it is, I was out just a minute ago. It seemed like mostly a moonlit night, or mostly a moonless night, which makes things even harder for them to respond to this right now. You can see the lights and the major response out there. It's a little hard to make it out, but that is the Wilson Bridge off in the distance. If you're familiar with the DC area, that is the bottom side of the Beltway. So we're looking towards Virginia right now. This happening essentially on the shores of the Potomac in Arlington, Virginia, just over the DC line.
Yeah, and Pete, just the airport was not allowing takeoffs or landings. We are now hearing from an FAA advisory that Reagan National Airport is closed due to an emergency. And as you noted there, you can see this massive response here. And from this angle, this camera from the DC Bureau, I mean, just to give everyone a heads up, we're about a 15-minute drive from Reagan National here at the Bureau. And that shows you, we can see just how overwhelming this response is right now. And as you noted, I mean, this is not something that has happened in decades. If so, as we are still waiting to learn more details.
Commercial aviation worldwide, and especially in the United States, is incredibly safe. And in the U.S., it is really the gold standards that other countries follow when it comes to our regulatory framework that essentially protects lives. And the rules in aviation are essentially written in blood. And there were times in aviation where there were major spates of accidents and major fatalities over and over again. And aviation really did clean up its act through the 90s and beyond. This, if it is a significant incident, and we really do not know a lot right now,
yes, we do.
Could really mark the end of an incredible safety streak for commercial aviation in the United States. I just checked, and a CRJ 700 like this seats between 66 78 people.
Wow.
So it's not the small, we've called it a small airplane on our air.
It's not that small.
Our initial copy here internally at CNN and beyond, that this was a small airplane. Small is very relative. This is not involving a Cessna. This is not a Piper. This is not a Beechcraft. This is not a Cirrus. This is something this is a real bona fide airliner, and it's likely one
this is a big airplane. You can't mistake it. The Black Hawk helicopter crashed right into it. They tried to act, they couldn't see one another. BS.
You and I and folks at home have been on, especially connecting smaller, busier airports, metropolitan airports like DCA, like Reagan National Airport, to larger hubs. It appears from at least the early data from Flight Radar 24 that this was a flight from Wichita, Kansas, here into Reagan National Airport. It was slated to arrive around 8:48 this evening.
What we are told is that this crashed just in the Potomac River, not on the runway or right outside the airport. I mean, they're obviously very close. You fly over the river when you're landing at Reagan National.
It didn't crash on the runway. Ma'am, the military helicopter hit the plane, ma'am. These people here are propagandists, ma'am. What the hell are y'all trying to do?
But the plane has actually crashed in the river, we believe.
Yeah, that's the initial thinking, and a rescue effort in the water would be incredibly difficult, especially given the darkness of the hour and the fact that it is so cold. And there has been a track record, a history here. Someone's going to have to check me on this as well, but in the early 80s, I think in 82. Air Florida Flight 90 crashed on takeoff from Reagan National Airport on runway 1. Back then it was a different number, but taking off to the north, the pilots were in a bit of a rush. It was snowing out, and they hit the 14th Street.
Yeah, all right. You don't want to do nothing but lie. You ain't gonna tell the truth, man. Not to save your life. Now, because this is historical evidence here that I have, they gonna try to scrub this off the internet. CNN is lying to all the viewers. Now, they saying it didn't happen on the runway. Hell no, it didn't happen on the runway, ma'am, because we got
them listening right now to WTTG. We're now taking over to show you this. This is video from the Kennedy Center camera, and you see that explosion right there. That is the moment when this small plane apparently crashed into a helicopter. You see,
that's a lie. You see, these people here also propagandists. No, the plane did not crash into the fucking helicopter. The helicopter, the Black Hawk military helicopter, rammed into the goddamn plane.
A fireball. And then, Marla, we see that plane head down towards the Potomac River.
Oh, what an image there. And according to our sister station in DC, WTTG,
don't believe your lying eyes, y'all. Don't believe what you see. Because what they want you to think is that this plane committed some type of suicidal nosedive. And CNN got the nerve not to show this video and then not to even talk about the helicopter crashed into the plane. They want you to think it's a malfunction, plane safety. What are you talking about? The helicopter crashed into the plane.
And listening right now to WTTG, we're now taking over to show you this. This is video from the Kennedy Center camera, and you see that explosion right there. That is the moment when this small plane apparently crashed into a helicopter. You see a fireball, and then, Marla, we see that plane head down towards the Potomac River.
Oh, what an image there. And according to our sister station in DC, WTTG, that in fact is confirmed that a small aircraft collided with a helicopter. They were hearing that it is not a DC police.
Words matter, bro. Words do matter. It do matter that they saying that plane crashed into that helicopter instead of saying that the Black Hawk military helicopter crashed into that plane. Words matter.
Helicopter, and colleagues on the ground say that several people were saying that it was a military helicopter. That information is not confirmed, but according to our sister station in DC, Fox 5 they have confirmed that it is a helicopter and a small aircraft that has collided. Again, this is courtesy of the Kennedy Center, the moment of impact.
Yeah, you can see. Hold on, lady. Y'all ain't gonna tell. I gotta tell. I'm
Kennedy Center, the moment of.
Tell my people the truth. You see that light? You see that small that helicopter, bro? That's a U.S. Black Hawk helicopter. So they saying. I want to see the helicopter now because I don't know if this is a drone that look like a helicopter. We don't know. All we know is U.S. military. Y'all asked one of y'all vehicles that's in the air crashed into this goddamn plane, and we want to know why. I don't want to hear it's dark at night. Man, that place is lit up right there. And the U.S. military, they really fly in the dark. So you talking about they drive in the city where it's really dark. They work off sensors. Come on, man. Why did this helicopter do this? Terrorism. Act of terrorism.
Impact.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is to find out who the hell was on that. I'm telling you, when we find out who was on that plane, then we're going to know the severity. Probably some chip makers, probably some Chinese. Probably, I'm telling you, if it was some Chinese scientists or something, this shit gonna be crazy. It better not have been some Chinese scientists, man, who working on some new. I swear to God, these people nefarious, bro. That's the DC area. It's a bunch of.
And good evening. It is 10:34 here on the East Coast, and this is a CBS News special report. I'm Christine Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air once again with more details about that breaking news story out of Washington, D.C. here tonight. A commercial airline has collided with a helicopter in midair while on approach to Reagan National Airport. The passenger plane then crashed into the Potomac River. CBS News has confirmed there were 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board. It was an American Airlines flight that departed from Wichita, Kansas. The FAA has confirmed it was a PSA Airlines jet operating as American Airlines Flight 5342 that departed, as we said, from Wichita, Kansas. The FAA says that the jet collided with a Sikorsky H-60 helicopter. It's a military helicopter that's more commonly known as a Black Hawk. This collision happened while the passenger plane was on approach to runway 33 at Reagan Washington National Airport around 9 p.m. local time, Eastern Standard Time. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said President Donald Trump has been made aware of this situation, and tragically, it does appear that a military helicopter collided with a regional jet. The FAA, as a result, has grounded all planes at Reagan Airport. And also Washington's police said multiple agencies were responding to the crash site in the Potomac. Police have also said that fireboats have joined this operation. Now, imagine how chilly the Potomac River is currently. We've had a very cold spell here on the East Coast.
The U.S. military brought that plane down into that water on purpose. That's crazy. That made me think of what the hell. So there's a bunch of smoke and mirror on the news. So we know we're really not getting the totality of the story. What we know is the U.S. military brought the plane down. Well, how do you know? Because they used a Black Hawk helicopter, weapon of war, to crash into the plane. We need to know who was the 60 passengers on that motherfucking plane and what exactly was going on and why they chose to bring it down over water and not over land. That's serious business.
The past few weeks. Let's now turn to our CBS's senior transportation correspondent, Chris Van Cleve. Chris, what more can you add to what we know right now?
Christine, what we know is the CRJ 700 was just really moments from touching down at Washington Reagan Airport when it appears these two aircraft collided and then plunged into the Potomac River. It's about 37 degrees there in Washington tonight. That was going to be very cold water. Time is going to be of the essence here. We understand 64 people on board. That's 60 passengers, 4 crew, 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants. You have an airspace that is shared between the planes coming in and out of Washington Reagan National Airport, as well as military aircraft that often operate in and around the D.C. area. Bolling Air Force Base is just a...
Well, who was on the military helicopter? I mean, shouldn't we be honoring our fallen heroes? Huh? Who was it? Sergeant who? Lieutenant who? First class petty officer who? Who who was on that military helicopter that just crashed into their plane? We want names of everybody.
Across the Potomac River, for example, that's home to a lot of helicopters.
We're probably going to find out if he have mental health issues.
I don't know that that's where this helicopter came from, but there's a lot of air traffic in that area. That's not uncommon. What is very uncommon, obviously, is for a close call or collision like this. We know there is a small army of first responders that are working to get to anyone who survived this accident as quickly as possible. Time is of the essence. You know, we have talked for a long time about how we're in an unparalleled period of aviation safety. The last aviation airline accident with a commercial airliner was in 2009. That unparalleled period of safety appears to have ended tonight.
Chris, if you can please stand by.
That line has been going down all over the fucking world. People just killed on the runway in South Korea. This nonsense. No, it's flying on a plane. You are not safe. But this is not just a regular plane crash. This is not just an airline that has some mechanical problems, sir. You propagandists from the CIA, Operation Mockingbird. This is a U.S. military Black Hawk, a weapon of war, who has all the proper devices that them people could close their eyes and fly that plane, bro. And fly the helicopter. That helicopter is only going to crash into that plane if you make it crash into that goddamn plane. This is a fact. The U.S. military know that. But they think everybody is stupid.
I want to go to Josh Gross. He joins us now on the phone. He's a producer here with CBS. And Josh, I understand that you are at the scene right now. What are you witnessing?
You can just the scene, but the rescue operation seems to be stretched across about a half mile to a mile of the Potomac River, starting at the airport, runway 33, and then stretching south. The Potomac runs right between the airport itself and Air Force Anacostia Bowling, and there seems to be operations on both sides of the river.
Josh, it's very hard to see much of anything due to the darkness there. We're showing our viewers emergency lights that seem to go from one end of the screen to the other. Are you able to see any rescue operations that are happening? And do you see the plane in the river?
Unfortunately, I'm on the same side of the river as the cameras. The places where their operations seem to be taking place are areas that are not accessible by the public. It's right off the airport itself or the base, and we can't just drive our vehicles on there. There are at least 3 helicopters in the sky. One seems to be hovering directly over one of the busier areas in terms of rescue vehicles. But it's too dark to see any airplane wreckage or any helicopter or anything like that in the water. It is too dark and too far away.
All right, Josh, we appreciate that update from you. Please stay on scene and stay on the phone line. And of course, when you get new information, we'll get back to you. In the meantime, Chris, I'd like to go back to you and just talk more about the operations that usually take place in the sky over the Potomac, particularly during this hour of night. Is a Black Hawk helicopter commonly seen doing operations, possibly practicing military moves and that sort of thing?
It is not an uncommon sight to see a Black Hawk helicopter in the D.C. area. The Pentagon is just on the other side of Washington Reagan Airport. You have military bases that are home to things like Air Force One and Marine One, the presidential helicopter. So it is not uncommon to see military helicopters in that area. You also see police helicopters in that area. In fact, I was up in the D.C. police helicopter near Reagan Airport just the other day ahead of the inauguration. And, there's considerable care taken. We made a very steep descent to get underneath a certain altitude so we wouldn't be in the path of planes that were taking off from Reagan. What's going to happen now, Christine, there's a rescue operation. That's why traffic has been halted at Washington's Reagan Airport. They don't need additional airplanes coming in and out to complicate what's going on in the water now. This is a rescue operation that's primary. So flights going into Washington Reagan are being diverted elsewhere. That airport is basically not operating right now. The National Transportation Safety Board is getting briefed. They will lead this investigation. They are incredibly good at what they do. In fact, they just recently trained on a a plane crash scenario because it has been so long since there's been one in the United States. They will begin looking at what happened here. Obviously, one of the goals very quickly will be to get the onboard voice and data recorders from that airplane, as well as any sort of data recorder information on board this helicopter. The military tends to investigate military crashes. They will likely participate in this, but we hear the NTSB will be the lead agency here.
And Chris, quickly tell our viewers about this regional jet, American Airlines, run by American Eagle. This is just a normal passenger plane.
Correct. This is a 2-engine jet. It seats an American's configuration up to about 78 passengers. You have certainly seen them at an airport. It's a very common regional jet. It operates, it'll say American Eagle on the side. It is owned and operated by PSA, which is an airline owned wholly by American Airlines. I've flown on these airplanes all the time. They come in and out of Washington Reagan many, many times a day. So this is a very common airliner. It has a good safety history. Obviously here, the investigation is going to focus on how it is these two aircraft collided so close to Washington Reagan Airport.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Once again, we're following developing details out of Washington, D.C., where we know that a Black Hawk helicopter has collided with an American Airlines Eagle regional jet, 60 passengers on board, 4 crew members. A massive rescue effort is happening right now in the Potomac River.
The U.S. military got to explain themselves, bro. Why did they do that? And we don't want to hear just a mistake. Are y'all nuts? Y'all the U.S. military, bro. Y'all can't just be ramming y'all weapons of war into the citizens like that, killing them, bro. Y'all just had one of y'all citizens, active duty citizens, blowing up a Tesla in Las Vegas. Then you had another one of your ex-soldiers killing people down there in New Orleans. Then now we had the U.S. military killing 6 people. What the hell is going on here? Killing 60 people in this goddamn plane. Oh, yes. We got to look deep into y'all U.S. military. What type of black ops are y'all running here in America? And we're waiting to hear if this dude had, whoever was in that Black Hawk military plane, was he going through mental health issues? Did his wife leave him like y'all told us these other guys' wife left him? Huh? Was he having, let me guess, he was having financial problems, huh?
Back now to this breaking news that we have just started to cover, which is a plane crash in Washington, D.C. We have a little bit more information than we previously had just moments ago when I first brought you news of this crash. These are still preliminary reports, but this is a serious incident. What we believe has happened here, again, according to preliminary reports, is that there has been a collision between an American Airlines regional jet, so a passenger plane, that was flying into DCA, flying into Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C., the flight originated apparently in Wichita, Kansas. The collision was reportedly with a Black Hawk helicopter. And both the helicopter and the American Airlines regional jet are believed to be down in the Potomac River, where rescue operations are currently going on. Reagan National Airport is shut down because of this emergency right now. The Potomac River is very near to Reagan National Airport. These things are in very close proximity, but as you see here, there's a huge police, fire, EMS response. We're told that police fireboats are part of this operation, but they are trying to rescue people out of the Potomac, as far as we understand it right now. We have NBC News' Tom Costello on the phone now. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello. Tom, has anything I just said has the reporting gotten any further beyond what I just said, and is anything that I said inaccurate?
No, you're absolutely 100% accurate, at least as of this moment. No surprise. Reagan Airport is now shut down as we are dealing with a major emergency here right on the Potomac at Reagan National Airport. As you mentioned, this is apparently a regional jet coming in from Wichita, and a regional jet can carry anywhere from 50 to 100 people, depending on how crowded it is, how busy it is, and then a Black Hawk helicopter. Anybody who's been to Reagan Airport, you know that there is a lot of military type of helicopter activity right over the river, right across the river, because of course we've got the helicopter base that handles everything for the White House, for the president, and then you've got an awful lot of diplomatic type of helicopter traffic up and down the river. So exactly how this happened, how we have this apparent collision midair over the Potomac River. And at this moment, we have reports that both the plane and the chopper are, in fact, in the water. It is a massive response. Complicated. It has been complicated by the fact that we have had a very icy Potomac River because it was so cold here over the past week. And Rachel, we had a horrific accident on one of the bridges last week between the district and Virginia where a truck went into the river. But because it was so covered in ice, the DC Fire Department's icebreaker ship is out of service. It's not even anywhere near DC right now. And as a result, that complicated the rescue efforts. I am hoping that the ice broke up enough over the last few days where we've had warmer temps.
So I'm hearing it could have been some VIPs on this plane. I'm looking, y'all, but I see some sadistic numbers. 33, runway 33. So this happened on runway 33. Oh man, yeah, they sacrificed these people, yeah.
Allowing these boats to get to the scene faster. That was a huge problem last week, and literally 2 people died, and the rescue response was delayed because of that lack of an icebreaker. As for this very moment, though, exactly how this happened, we simply don't know at this hour. As you know, right on the river, anybody who's come into Reagan National Airport knows you come right over the river, and you have to avoid that very sensitive airspace over Washington, D.C., for example, over the White House, over the National Mall, over the Capitol. That's all restricted airspace. And so that forces air traffic to come down, either down the river from north to south or from south to north. We don't, at this hour, know precisely how this particular flight was coming in, the regional jet. And we don't know exactly if it was too far out over the river, a lot of unanswered questions. And immediately, the concern is, are there people in the water who are alive? This is an all-out emergency of the highest order right now. I would also point out, for those who don't live in the D.C. area, there is a multi-agency mutual assist agreement on major incidents like this. So they're going to have not only, of course, the airport fire rescue teams, they're also going to have the D.C. Fire and Rescue. You're going to get Arlington and Alexandria from Virginia, probably even Montgomery County from Maryland, all responding in. This would be the highest priority, and you can imagine the mutual aid response is going to be, really of a high magnitude.
Tom, as we've been talking, we've been observing some of the comments, public comments that have been made, particularly by elected officials who represent Kansas. Again, we believe that this American Airlines regional jet this flight originated in Kansas, potentially in Wichita, Kansas. Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas has just posted online, learning that a plane inbound from Kansas was involved in a crash at DCA. He says, I am in contact with authorities. Please join me in praying for all involved. I mentioned that because it would seem to indicate at least be some corroboration of the idea that this jet was from Kansas in terms of where it started. Tom, let me just ask you what you were describing about the 2 aircraft that we believe were involved here. A Black Hawk helicopter, the American Airlines regional jet, which, as you note, is a jet of a size that can carry 50 to 100 people, generally speaking, categorically speaking. We have no idea how many people were involved, were on board that jet at this point.
Yeah.
Is air traffic control at DCA more complex than it would be at other airports of that size because of the confluence of military and diplomatic travel, the involvement of things like Black Hawk helicopters, along with commercial and private air?
I think that's accurate. Yeah. I mean, listen, I think, and we've also had a series of close calls here at Reagan Airport over the last couple of years, in which planes got way too close to each other and had to wave off. And can I just draw your attention to the fact that we are just now getting an FAA statement that, in fact, a Bombardier CRJ 700 regional jet collided in midair with a Sikorsky H-60 helicopter while on approach to runway 33 at Reagan Washington Airport, 9 p.m. local time. And this was operating as Flight 5342. For American, leaving Wichita, Kansas, inbound to Reagan Airport. And obviously, according to the FAA, both the FAA and NTSB will investigate. The priority at this moment is saving lives and getting as many assets as possible out there onto the river, whether that's DC Fire and Rescue, Arlington, Alexandria, whoever is available, whoever has rescue boats available, get them in the water as fast as possible. And this harkens back, in my mind, I would tell you, Rachel, back to the early 80s when we had a plane go down in the Potomac River. And it was a plane that literally had left Reagan Airport, and it was at the time called National Airport, had not been properly de-iced. It hit the bridge and went into the river and killed an awful lot of people. I'd have to go back and look at how many. But since then, that was one of the many reasons that de-icing equipment became standard on planes. Nonetheless, we haven't had any sort of an accident like this at Reagan Airport since then, since the early 80s. This is extremely serious.
Tom, I want to put up something on screen here that I've just been told. I have not seen this. We're going to be showing to our viewers and seeing it here for the first time. This is from EarthCam. It's some footage that may show the actual collision. Let's just watch here and see what we can see. Again, we're seeing this as you are. Oh, yes. The crash there in the center of your screen, sort of toward the right. Again, what the FAA is saying that we are seeing here is the midair collision of a Bombardier CRJ-700 regional jet. It was American Airlines Flight 5342 from Wichita to Washington, D.C., colliding midair with a Sikorsky H-60 helicopter as the plane was on approach to land at runway 33 at Reagan Washington National Airport. We've got the FAA and NTSB investigating, the NTSB leading the investigation. We've got what appears to be a rescue effort underway with these aircraft and their passengers potentially being in the icy Potomac River right now, and that rescue operation being not only massive but incredibly urgent, in part because of the freezing temperatures both in that water and just generally in Washington, D.C. right now. Tom, looking at this footage from EarthCam, can you tell anything more? Can you say anything to our viewers in terms of how to interpret what they're seeing here?
Boy, I really can't, Rachel. And I'm looking at it with you, and all I can really discern from that is that there was some sort of clearly an explosion from a midair midair contact, hitting each other. Now, it looks to me like it's a smaller vehicle, a smaller craft that comes from behind and hits the bigger one. But boy, that's very speculative at this point. That shot is.
They didn't hit each other. See this bullshit they keep pulling? The Black Hawk U.S. military plane targeted and brought down the plane. They can play word games all they want. The evidence is clear. That Black Hawk U.S. military plane can't accidentally hit this plane. That is a high-tech advanced weapon of war with a bunch of gadgets and bunch of stuff. Alarm systems go off. If you're even approaching this plane like that, they absolutely hit that plane on purpose. No matter what these people can say. They collided. They both hit each other. Man, please. One hit the other.
Taken from such a long way away, and you can see there are other planes, other air traffic in the air as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing that catches your attention first is a plane that's not involved in the collision that appears to be taking off in the foreground. You see there, that's the thing that's brightest. But then below it is where you see two smaller lights effectively come together. They're at a relatively low altitude compared to the other things you can see. You've got a little context there in terms of the bridge traffic over the Potomac, and then they go down. It's just very distressing to see this. Tom, can I also ask you talked about the scale of the response and the different agencies that you would expect in terms of fire, police, EMS, and rescue that'd be responding from surrounding communities. If this is a military copter, would you also expect that the U.S. military might be involved in some of these initial rescue efforts, if this is their personnel, if these were their pilots?
Rescue.
I would imagine that any military assets that are nearby would immediately respond, especially from that helicopter base that's so close right across the river. And, listen, this city has no shortage, as you know, of police agencies. And this is going to be an all hands on deck emergency. The priority is to get let's hope there are survivors. Get people out of this icy water as fast as possible. But if it's in the middle of the river, that really is. And of course, the river is moving. They need to try to get that. Whatever vehicle, whichever plane or chopper, if there's any craft that has the potential for having people inside, they've got to move fast.
Yeah. Let's reset and let people know what they're looking at here. This is live footage that you're seeing here with the red and blue lights flashing. This is obviously a large emergency response for what appears to be a major emergency at DC National Airport, Reagan National Airport in Washington, DC. That airport is shut down. The airfield is closed. All runways are closed at Reagan National Airport. American Airlines flight 5342. It was operated by PSA Airlines, but it was operating as American Airlines flight 5342, taking off from Wichita, intending to land at Reagan Washington National Airport around 9 p.m. It was approaching runway 33, according to a preliminary statement from the FAA. And it collided, according to the FAA, in midair with a Sikorsky H-60 helicopter. The geography of Reagan National Airport is such that that collision upon approach to that runway appears to have put both of those aircraft into the very icy Potomac River. And we are seeing a massive scale rescue operation underway right there. We do not know the number of people who are on board that helicopter.
Yes.
We don't know what that helicopter.
You damn sure know how many people are on there. Y'all some liars. Y'all get paid all that money to confuse people. You know, what you need to tell us is who was on it. We're going to find out. I'm going to get the passenger list, my God. I don't need y'all.
National Airport.
I just hang around some of these live streams. We just hang out. We'll get it.
They're marked. They're well known. The military guys know where they are. Yes, there is a lot of helicopter traffic in the area. There's helicopters coming from Andrews Air Force Base, from Davidson Army Airfield.
See, what have we found here? Trump is saying this is a terrorist attack. What did Trump post? The airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. Check what I said. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. Come on, y'all. Didn't I already say that? We there. We don't need Trump or nobody else to tell us. But we looking for other people to come to the conclusion that we had. Now we have the most powerful man in the United States, Donald Trump, saying, what the fuck going on? What kind of terrorism is this? Okay. It is a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? This is a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented. Not good. Come on, man. Trump already on it. What y'all think I'm stupid? What the hell did this U.S. military helicopter plane target? Why does this helicopter target this plane and bring this plane down? Even a blind man can see what happened.
From different places.
Terrorism,
but
bro.
They do have planned routes to get in and out of the area. The question now is, which route was this helicopter on? What were the communications with this helicopter? And also, having lived in D.C. and flown in this environment, at night, there's a lot of lights out there.
I knew it.
And so we get into the human factors of the helicopter said, yes, I saw the airplane. Well, did he really see that one, or he did see another light out there that he misidentified? And so the NTSB is going to have to do visibility studies from both aircraft. What could they see? Certainly, as John mentions, the RJ on approach is focusing on the runway. He's focusing on the approach. But could he have seen this? Where was the helicopter positioned? This is going to take time. It's going to take time to go through all the data and take a look at it. But I don't want people to think that these helicopters are just out there randomly running around. They do have very specific routes to fly. They are in communication with air traffic. And the question happens here, what happened? Where did communications fail? Where did visibility fail? This is sort of a see and avoid environment. And how didn't that work in this situation? And it'll take a while to piece together. And I know the NTSB will do it. but it will take time. It's not going to be solved overnight.
And Tom, I'm wondering what you make. The president obviously has been briefed on this and posted on Truth Social. Asked a question. Obviously, it's one of the questions that people are thinking about tonight. He said, "Why didn't the tower communicate with the helicopter?" We believe that there was communication between the tower and the helicopter. I'm wondering what you think of that question first off, and then, when the NTSB, they say they're sending their investigators tonight, when they get there, what is the first thing that they do?
Well, in terms of the question, it's a good one. I mean, what were the communications? And if the tower says, do you see the other aircraft? And he gets back a positive response. Yes, I have the aircraft in sight. The tower thinks, fine, they'll avoid each other and it's not an issue. So, but we need to pin that down, what exactly happened. The NTSB tonight, they'll have structures people on scene to start taking a look at the wreckage. They'll have survival factors people on scene to take a look at, gather information about victims and seeding and everything else. They'll be sending people to the operator, American, to look at all the records. So a lot will happen, but the NTSB will show up on scene mainly to, okay, the NTSB's here, we're in control of the situation, we're gathering information, and everything flows to the NTSB, which includes even from the military side. So they'll be very busy basically establishing their teams, putting everything together. And part of it's just getting to the accident site and how are we going to recover this wreckage, and in a systematic fashion. Once the search and recovery is over, then the NTSB will go into action to start pulling all the pieces out of the water and document them each time.
Tom, thank you. I want to go back to Alex Perche. And just for our viewers who have been with us for a while now, you've been watching Alex there give us a ground view of what's going on. He now joins us from the phone because he's moved over to where that news conference is going to happen. You see it there on your screen. We're waiting for the officials to come in, but it seems like there's some activity, so this should be happening soon. We heard originally 11:30, then it was pushed to 12:30, and now it's just about 10 minutes before 1 o'clock in the morning. Alex, you're over there. What are you expecting to hear? Have they told you who's going to be briefing the media?
Hey, Phil. So, yeah, we are awaiting this press conference, but like most things this evening, it's been very, very fluid, and so it slid. We do see law enforcement that's kind of congregated. Actually, let me orient you really quickly. We are in Terminal 1 right now, and so we have seen law enforcement kind of congregated in front of what is the Frontier check-in area, which is quite a ways away. It's a far enough away where you can have a private conversation out of earshot from the media. But we haven't gotten a lot of guidance in terms of who we're going to hear from or who all is represented. And I will tell you that, I mean,
I have another clip that's going around. This is another angle of the crash. This is taken from the ground, it looks like.
Horrible. Yeah, they've been pulling bodies, but unfortunately no survivors. I haven't heard of any survivors going to any hospitals or anything like that. Yeah, they pulled bodies. Doesn't appear survivors though. So again, 60 on board, a few crew members. Just horrible.
For Hope is it's closing relatively quickly, and I think that is why you're seeing just such a frantic pace here right now.
And Alex, before you moved over to where you're in Terminal 1, before you moved over there, I'm wondering how much activity are you seeing actually out on the water? I've been watching these pictures for the better part of a few hours now, and it doesn't seem like there's a ton of activity actually out on the water. It looks like a lot of those emergency vehicles are on the side. I don't want to make anything out of that, but I'm just wondering what you've been seeing in terms of activity on the water.
Salute, Queen.
Sure. Well, so from our vantage point, you could kind of see activity in the water. I will
Wait
say
till
also
that
where that
passenger
staging
man,
area
wait till that
was
passenger
on the
list come
port
out.
side, on the
We don't know
opposite
why the
side
U.S. military told us that plane and brought
where
it
the
down.
last couple live shots we've had were, there's a dock ramp there, and so I would just caution that there are likely a couple of different approaches from the water to this crash site. But in terms of the wall of red lights that we were looking at on that runway 33 on the southern end, most of those are on the land.
Runway
So
33.
you're corrected in your conclusion there that it does seem as though
runway 33. You see what I'm saying? The Masons, these people put their demonic actions right in your face, man. But they wanted to go over some people's head. It's runway 33.
The activity on the water has died down, but if that's because the water is so cold and it's giving obstacles to dive teams, or it's just not safe, or if that's some other sort of indicator that we don't know.
Yeah, and Alex, stay with us, and obviously let us know when that news conference begins. Sam Sweeney has just sent out some information that we were talking about how it's like 36 degrees. It's like 33 to 36 degrees, and obviously they're worried about not only hypothermia for anybody who survived the crash.
33 degrees out there, y'all. You heard them?
Crash, but also for the brave first responders who are out there in the water as well. So it is very cold. Earlier on this evening, this regional jet left from Wichita, Kansas, carrying 64 people, 60 passengers, 4 crew members. This direct flight from Wichita to D.C. just started a year ago. And earlier on this evening, I spoke to Mayor Lily Wu of Wichita, who said her first day on the job was actually the first day these flights started a year ago. Listen to some of our conversation. The mayor of Wichita is on the line. Mayor, first of all, my condolences. This is horrific. There are going to be people on that plane from your community.
Wait a minute. This better not be no Chinese lady. I know one thing. This better not be no Lily Wu. I don't want to, I don't want to racial profile. Anybody can have a last name Wu. I'm finna see if this is a Chinese lady. And then we're going to see if this was the Chinese community. I told y'all, it better not have been Chinese people on this goddamn plane, man. Come on.
Airport there in Wichita. We understand from the airport director that these direct flights to DC just began about a year ago this month. So obviously our condolences for what has happened tonight. Tell me what you know.
Well, this is truly tragic, and our entire community right now is
Asian lady
praying, hoping for better news.
Asian American.
But as a community, the entire city of Wichita, the city council members and the staff all throughout the city of Wichita are hoping that we have better news to come out of this. But all that we know right now is the information that American Airlines shared with me. And that is also public. The number of individuals, 60 passengers and 4 crew members, is the confirmed information. As for the individuals who were on board, we do not have any further information, and we are still waiting for that.
We're waiting for that information as well, Mayor. I'm wondering what you are going to do there in your...
I'm at Reagan National Airport. I am joined by United States Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, United States Senator Jim Moran, Senator Roger Marshall, Jack Potter, the CEO of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. We are here to brief you on the very tragic events of this evening, where we know a passenger plane coming to the airport here collided with a military helicopter. Our fire department, DC Fire and EMS, supported by fire departments and police departments from across the Washington metropolitan region are executing a rescue operation in the Potomac River. They are working diligently in very dark and cold conditions, cold water, to execute this rescue operation. We have had the opportunity to be briefed by American Airlines officials. I'm told that American Airlines leadership is on the way to Washington as well. And officials are in the airport talking to families now. We do have a 1-800 number where families should contact us, should contact American Airlines for more information, and we will be providing that information shortly. I am going to turn to a number of officials to provide as much information as we can this evening, and we expect to have more frequent briefings at daylight. So with that, I'm going to turn to Secretary Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I think for all of us, we want to extend our thoughts and prayers to those individuals who were impacted by the events tonight, their families. We know this is a very difficult time for all of them. I want to join the mayor and everyone here to extend our thank you to the first responders who, again, in very difficult situations and environments are out there searching and attempting to rescue. Tonight, I spoke with President Trump and his team in the Situation Room. I had a conversation with Secretary Pete Hegseth as well, and then with the Kansas delegation and the mayor and others in leadership, as well as Governor Youngkin from Virginia and Governor Kelly from Kansas. From the Department of Transportation and FAA's perspective, we are going to offer full support to those on the ground, to the mayor, but also to the NTSB, who is going to be conducting the investigation in this matter. We are going to provide all the support that's necessary. Mayor.
Thank you. So with that, I want to ask Chief John Donnelly from DC Fire and EMS to provide an update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Donnelly, Chief of DC Fire and EMS. This evening at 8:48, an alert was sounded, initiating a large regional response to a report of an aircraft crash on approach to the airport. This response includes first the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority's Fire Department, the District of Columbia Fire Department, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the U.S. Park Police to respond into the area and to sort that out. At 8:58, the first units arrived on the scene and found an aircraft in the water and began rescue operations. This incident has grown. There's currently about 300 responders working. We have boats from all throughout the region, police and fire boats. We have a mutual aid agreement in Washington, D.C., the National Capital Region Mutual Aid Agreement administered by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and we're all operating under that. We're operating under a unified command. Everybody's together. So we also have requested state police helicopters from Maryland, and the Coast Guard helicopter is working. So this is a state and federal response as well. U.S. Coast Guard's got some boats in the water as well. So it's a highly complex operation. The conditions out there are extremely rough for the responders. It's cold. They're dealing with relatively windy conditions. Wind is hard out on the river. So they're out there working. We're doing everything we can to keep them safe. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you. In Chief Bonnet from MWA.
I'm Rick Bonnet, Fire Chief of MWA Fire and Rescue. Our units, as Chief Donnelly already alluded to, at 2048, we received an alert from the FAA tower of an aircraft incident involving a commercial aircraft and a helicopter. Our units immediately responded and deployed 3 boats and immediately called for mutual aid resources. Again, as Chief Donnelly said, it's an active operation that's going to last many hours as we continue to work through recovery efforts and rescue operations. This will be ongoing for quite a while. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and our communities, and we appreciate all DC's support to our agency and our federal partners.
So with that, I wanted to turn to the senators who are from Kansas who wanted to say a few words. First, Senator Moran, and then Senator Marshall.
Mayor, thank you, and Mr. Secretary, thank you, and to our first responders, thank you very much for all that's taking place here. I'm Jerry Moran. I'm a United States Senator from Kansas, and I chair the subcommittee in Commerce Committee on Aviation. So we have really a serious and sad circumstance that we want to be here to be helpful. And we're praying that our responders are safe and the folks who are on that flight are recovered. The circumstance I would describe is that I know that flight. I've flown it many times myself. I lobbied American Airlines to begin having a direct nonstop flight service to DCA. That flight has been in existence about a year. And it is certainly true that in Kansas and in Wichita in particular, we're going to know people who are on this flight, know their family members, know somebody. So this is a very personal circumstance as well as an official response. And again, we will do everything we can to make certain that we're supportive of the rescue efforts, and we'll do everything we can to make certain that our subcommittee and Congress is engaged in what needs to take place following the outcome of this evening and this month's kind of investigation. I've talked to NTSB, I've talked to the White House, I've talked to the Department of Defense, and I've talked to the CEO of American Airlines. And there is all of us pulling together for the best outcome possible. I'm honored to be here with my colleague, Senator Marshall, as we try to make certain that we care for those certainly back in Kansas that were on that flight. But it's a reminder that there are people here in Washington, D.C., and this region, in Virginia and Maryland, and many places else that fly to and from Kansas. And so we're rooting and supporting all those, regardless of where you're from. And Mayor, I appreciate the gathering here for us to try to provide information to those in Kansas and across your city. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, Senator Moran and Mayor, Secretary. You know, when one person dies, it's a tragedy, but when many, many, many people die, it's an unbearable sorrow. It's a heartbreak beyond measure. And I know Senator Moran and I are here just to say we care. We wish that there was more we could do, but unfortunately, there doesn't seem much at this time. I want the folks back home to just know that we care, that we love them, and that this is a time when we'll have to join arms together and help each other out. We've been through things like this before, through tornadoes and floods and things, but it's really hard when you lose, you know, probably over 60 Kansans simultaneously. And I don't want to forget the pilots and the flight attendants, you know, are doing, you know, do their job, and the military personnel we lost. You know, all those lives are so valuable, and it is such a tragedy that we lost them. You know, I think often in times like this, I try to find a scripture that, you know, is apropos, and this is from the book of Psalms. It says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Certainly we're crushed in spirit tonight. We mourn with the families who lost loved ones, and we truly are joining them in prayer and wrapping our arms around them in love and compassion. Thanks for everybody for coming out tonight. And thank you for your thoughts and your prayers.
So certainly I speak for the people of Washington, 700,000 of us who are extremely sorry for the families who are experiencing loss. tonight. And so we want you to know that we will continue to work with American Airlines to share information as frequently as possible and make sure that we're getting accurate information out to the public. But my sorrow for all of the people and crew on the plane and our military personnel on the helicopter is very deep. I do want to turn to Jack Potter, who is the CEO of our Airports Authority, responsible for Reagan National Airport and Dulles International Airport, to talk to you about how the airport responded and what we're looking, what's going to happen next.
Good evening. As was said, I'm Jack Potter, the President and CEO of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. Thank you all for being here tonight and under these very, very grim circumstances. First of all, I want to let you know that we're providing support to all the families who are involved. American Airlines has established a phone number for them to reach out. It's been published, but let me repeat it. It's 1-800-679-8215. So families of folks that were on the plane are asked to contact them. We did have folks who were at the airport to pick up loved ones. And so American has set up a center in their in their lounge at the north end of the airport. And we've directed the families there. And there are folks there counselors there to work with the families. We did have aircraft that were in the air. They were diverted to Dulles Airport, some 19 aircraft. We had personnel, United and others had personnel. We want to thank WMATA for extending their hours on the Metro to make sure that those folks were accommodated. Right now, as was said earlier by the chief, we're in a rescue mode. We will continue in that rescue mode. I want to thank all of the mutual aid responders, all the counties, the district, folks from Maryland and Virginia. Everybody's on site doing the best they can, and numerous boats out on the water right now. NTSB is on site. I want to thank all of the folks behind me, the secretary, the mayor, the 2 senators for all of their support. And we're going to continue to work through the night. I do want to make an announcement. People are, concerned about what's going to happen in the morning. Reagan National Airport will be closed until 11 o'clock. That's when the first flights will take off. But we're going to continue to do our best and work through this situation over the course of the night. And we hope to have more news as it develops. But for right now, it's a very difficult situation out there with the cold. It's very dark, but there are numerous boats out there. There are dive teams out there. So again, we'll continue to work this situation, and I'll turn it back to the mayor. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that update. And you've heard that in the National Capital Region, the District of Horace is Washington, D.C. is at the center, but we are a close region. We have heard from the governors of Maryland and Virginia, the mayor of the city of Baltimore, all who have sent us personnel to help in the rescue operations. Last thing I'll note is just to our local viewership, and just please let our first responders do their work. Try to let our vehicles get to scenes and through scenes. We don't want anybody else to get hurt because of moving vehicles, okay? So we will be able to take a few questions. There's not a lot that we can say. We won't be able to say anything about an investigation. As you know, once fire and EMS completes the rescue operation, then the investigation goes over to the National Transportation Safety Board. And I'm sure the safety board, NTSB, will provide information about when they will be briefing about an investigation. So we'll take a few. Yes.
Can you confirm that both aircraft are in the water, and perhaps Chief Donnelly can explain what's involved in conducting an operation like this?
Yes, both aircraft are in the water. The focus now is rescuing people. And that's what all of our personnel are focused on. And Chief, I think he's given a pretty good description, but if there's anything else you want to add, Chief?
I would just say that the boats are out doing searches. We have divers on both aircraft, and they're searching the aircraft at this point.
Right. Yes.
Have any survivors been found, and how many bodies have been recovered?
All we can confirm tonight is the number of people on each aircraft, 64 people on the American Airlines plane and 3 people on the military helicopter. And we can't provide any more information about recovery
The
efforts.
2 people have talked about lost loved ones. So how do you know that there might be people who have lost loved ones?
I didn't say I didn't know people had lost loved ones. I said we can't talk about any of the recovery efforts in specific tonight.
Yeah, Secretary Duffy, can I?
So I'll call on who's next. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Will this affect operations at Dulles and BWI? Will the Potomac River traffic be closed to boats?
Yes. And so Jack has talked about, Jack, can you talk about Dulles? I'm not sure we can talk about BWI, but we can talk about Dulles.
There is no impact at BWI or at Dulles. As I said earlier, our airport here, Ronald Reagan National Airport, will be closed until 11 o'clock. Obviously, that will be fluid. We'll learn more, but we wanted to advise passengers who might be coming to the airport in the morning that we will be closed until at least 11 o'clock.
Secretary Duffy.
Yeah, 1 second. You're next.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you so much. So just other than the current situations, like we know the water is extremely cold and it's very dark outside. Although the senator is saying that there are numerous boats in the water, but what's the the biggest challenges for the rescue team? What best scenario we can expect in the coming few hours till morning?
So the challenges are access. The water that we're operating in is about 8 feet deep. There is wind, there is pieces of ice out there. So it's just dangerous and hard to work in. And because there's not a lot of lights, you're out there searching every square inch of space to see if you can find anybody. The divers are doing the same thing in the water. The water is dark, it is murky, and that is a very tough condition for them to dive in. The question about the river, we'll make that decision later. The Coast Guard's on scene, and I would expect that it's not a high use time in the river, and we should not expect to have commercial recreational traffic on the river tomorrow.
Okay, 3 questions. 1, 2, 3.
It's for Secretary Duffy. Have you been in touch with the air traffic controllers who were in the tower at the time of the crash?
I have not.
You have not. And second question, this is your first several hours in this position. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling right now?
My focus is on those who are impacted on this flight. And again, I've been secretary for a little over a day, and the tragedy that we're going to deal with this recovery, I think is touching everyone's hearts, whether it's here in the greater DC area or in Kansas. And again, I think everyone here is thinking and praying for those who potentially have lost a loved one. And thank you.
Okay, your question?
Could any of you give us any sense about how an accident like this could have happened so close to the airport, right in the heart of DC? There have been reports that the DCA tower contacted the helicopter moments before the crash to ask if they had sight of the aircraft, but apparently the helicopter reported that it did have sight of an aircraft. Is it possible that it had the wrong aircraft in sight? Do you have any sense of what went wrong in those final moments?
I know that the National Transportation Safety Board in its investigation will be able to search on all of those questions. We wouldn't be able to talk about that tonight. Yes.
2 points for Secretary Duffy. The first thing, you were talking about you were in the situation room with the president and he had said both being there. Can you tell us more about the president's initial reactions to this, as well as the extent that this was a military helicopter?
So I was not in the situation room. I did have a conversation with the situation room where the president was located, as well as with Secretary Hegseth. We're exchanging information. I would just note that not just the local team, but the federal team has performed very well in this crisis. I know the president is incredibly concerned about what's happened here today. I'm sure we'll continue to hear more from him, and I'll continue to consult with him and Secretary Hegseth.
When it comes to the resources that you would be able to provide on the federal level, do you feel like you're getting what you need?
Absolutely. The president has committed to this team and to the NTSB through the DOT that we will provide all resources necessary as we go through this recovery, but also the support from FAA and DOT as the NTSB investigates.
Mr. Secretary, do we know the condition of these aircraft? Are they whole? Are they split? Are they pieces?
Again, I don't think we can comment on that. Our focus is on getting the passengers and crew out of the water.
And just one more clarification, because earlier we got guidance that DCA was going to shut down at least until Friday at 5 a.m. I just heard 11 a.m. Tomorrow. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we can take a few more questions. A question here, a question here, and here.
Mayor Bowser, can you just confirm, has anybody been transported to the hospital?
Again, I can't say anything about the rescue operation right now. Who was next? Yes.
Yeah, Chief Donnelly, can you speak a little bit more about the unified command who leads this phase of the rescue and recovery? At what point do you then change phases? And can you describe to us the scene as best you can when first responders closely arrive?
So I happened to be listening to the radio this evening when the call came out. I listened to the responders come in, and the initial response, they were very professional, trying to locate this. This is, if you can imagine, the river is a large black spot at night with no lights on it, except for a few buoy lights. So they were out there looking. The boats pretty quickly were able to locate one of the aircraft and get there. So that's what's going on right now. Everybody's working on that. We will reevaluate where we are with the rescue operation in the morning when we get a better sense of it, but we are still out there working, and we're going to continue that throughout the night.
Do you have a sense that there are survivors?
We don't know yet, but we're working.
Is any part of the search happening over land?
No, we're all in the work.
Yes. Oh, you got a question. Somebody didn't get a question. Hold on. Yes.
I just wanted to ask, do you have an estimate yet on how long the recovery efforts will take?
So experiences like this we expect to continue our operations in the fire department for multiple days. And then I would expect the investigation goes longer than that.
Okay, you didn't get a question, and you were next, I think.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. My question is, do we have any plan to prevent future crash or future accidents? Do we have any like to reform the authority, the airport control to calm those people who are flying in the next few days? And also, how long the rescue is gonna last? Are we gonna stop rescue after tomorrow 11 a.m.? It's like divers team, because they are still in the golden hours now.
No, I mean, I think you just heard the chief said we're going to be out there as long as it takes. And we're obviously trying to get to people as soon as possible, but we are going to recover our fellow citizens. Yes.
This is for the chief and Secretary Duffy. How do you balance the search and rescue operation with preserving the scene for the investigation that's now underway?
So from the fire department's point of view, we are always going to put people first. But I don't think I think our operations, because we have a unified command, we are all working together, and the NTSB is in contact with us, and we will work together to make sure that if there's crucial evidence that it's preserved. And that's something we do every day with our police department on crime scenes and things. So life comes first and everything else after that.
Okay, last question. Yeah.
Secretary Duffy, I just want to ask
The military not going to let them touch that black hole
helicopter.
helicopter.
The FAA should take to prevent helicopters, commercial airplanes from getting too close to one another.
So obviously there'll be a review of what happened here tonight. And after the FAA studies what happened, we will take appropriate action if necessary to modify flight paths and permissions.
Do you have any more details about the helicopter mission with the Black Hawk and Mayor Bowser? Have you heard directly from President Trump?
I spoke with the president's national security advisor, and I have not talked to the president yet. And I do not know what the mission was. So let me close by saying again, thank you to the members of the press to help us get information out to the families. The American Airlines number is 800-679-8215. 800-679-8215. And I expect the airport will likely provide additional information in the morning. Thank you.
River.
All right, so there you have it. All that we know at this hour from officials, from the mayor of DC to senators from Kansas, to Sean Duffy, the recently appointed and approved Secretary of Transportation, to all of the folks who run the operations that you are watching there, and they are calling this a rescue operation. Still, I want to bring Aaron Katersky in to sort of debrief what we just heard. You and I were sitting here listening to that with our own questions, about the river and the current, and what they're doing, what the wreckage looks like at that hour. We didn't get a lot of that, but it seems like they were leaving it to the NTSB.
And I think truly it is fluid. So they did not provide any information about fatalities. Here at ABC News, we can confirm there are multiple fatalities. So far, they have not pulled any survivors from the water. That doesn't mean they won't. You heard the fire chief from DC Fire and EMS talk about how feverishly they're working in what he called a highly complex rescue operation right now in the cold, in the wind. The conditions on the Potomac are certainly not helpful to this kind of an operation. One new detail that I think was notable is the first call from the tower came at 8:48 p.m. Eastern Time. 10 minutes later at 8:58 p.m., the first units were on the scene to confirm that aircraft were in the water. And then some 300 responders descended onto the Potomac. They have dive teams at each piece of the wreckage. They have boats nearby, but you did hear that it is quite windy. They are working with a current, so they're having to stay with the pieces as they float through the water. And this operation is expected to last many, many hours.
We did get some confirmation there, and our Alex Brochet asked it. We originally thought the airport would be closed till 5 o'clock Friday morning. We heard, and that is fluid too, that it will open at 11 o'clock. He said first flights this morning, Thursday, in just about 9.5 hours. I want to bring in Jay O'Brien, who is at a reunification center at DCA. Jay, what's happening there now?
Yeah, so we're inside the closed terminal, Phil, and just to give you a sense of what it's like in here, as you and I talked about much earlier on in the night, it's deserted in here, and they've got these signs up here now saying that the airport is temporarily closed due to an emergency situation. As you noted, we got that tidbit of news that they're going to endeavor to get planes moving out of this airport again by tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. But what's really happening here is that family and friends of those who were on board that American Airlines flight are coming through these doors here, and they're going down these escalators here to a place where we understand the families are gathering. We've talked to some of them. We've also tried to be respectful, obviously, of what they're going through. They're shell-shocked, to say the least. They don't say much other than ask for directions, frankly, as to where they're going to go, and express the shock and, frankly, the questions that they have. A few friends of those who were on board that plane are also sitting out here in this area where we are, and they were watching that press conference, Phil, intently on their cell phones, trying to get any answer possible, because they still have hope that their loved ones, their friends, can be recovered, Phil.
It is heartbreaking how horrific. And they did hear that there are 300 people out there, 300 first responders looking for their loved ones. Jay, thank you. I want to bring in Catherine Falders right now. Catherine, we did hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, newly confirmed as of Friday. He said the Army and the Defense Department will immediately launch an investigation into what happened, this air disaster. What more do we know from the White House response tonight?
Look, we know that President Trump, of course, has been briefed on this incident. He has taken to Truth Social to, in his words, he is saying that there was an issue with the air traffic control tower. We didn't hear that much, at least from officials in that news conference then, but I'm told from a senior White House official who I was just speaking with that the president is still getting updates on this. He has been briefed. He's continuing to be briefed. He's receiving updates from his top advisors and his national security team. So we could hear more from him on this soon, but he is closely monitoring the situation.
Catherine Falders from DC. Catherine, thank you. I want to bring back in John Nance. John, I'm wondering, you watched that news conference with us. The NTSB was not there. They're obviously, they said they are going to be there tonight, but I'm wondering what you got from that news conference and how much more information are we going to need in the coming days?
We're going to need an awful lot more information, but by the same token, I think it was a very good presentation of the chiefs involved and the senators and everybody, putting a common face on what exactly needs to be done and talking about the NTSB and their particular role. So yes, we're just at the very beginning of this, and the cautions, that you're going to hear not only from me over and over again, but from a lot of people is this is early on in the investigation. Usually, in my experience over the years, our first idea of what happened is usually wrong. Here, we know we had a collision. The question is, what caused it?
All right, John, thank you. I want to let people know what we're looking at. These are brand new Getty images we're getting of the what looks to be the fuselage of the plane in several pieces. Aaron, you're taking a look at these. Does this pretty much go along with what that official told you from DC?
It does, Phil, in that the aircraft came down, hit the
It's
water,
not a
and
small plane. Man, get out.
the collision and the impact of the water broke apart into pieces, questioning the survivability factor here, Phil.
And then, of course, there was the impact and the temperature. But there are 300 people out there looking for anybody that they can find. Aaron, thank you. That's our show for now. I'm Phil Lipoff. ABC News Live will continue to cover this story for you all throughout the night. We'll bring you the latest in the morning as well. Good night.
All right. So, Magnolia. All right. So, this is going to be an all-night operation. Horrible. And 300 first responders are there. As you heard from the press conference, they're not confirming or denying anything about survivors or deaths. Loved ones are gathering at the airport. The airport, Reagan, plans to open back up at 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, there is a massive police presence, but what can you actually do at night? I mean, at this point, I'm thinking if you haven't found survivors by now, I don't think you're going to find any.
Yeah, it's been several hours at this point. So one thing that stood out to me, they definitely did not say anything about numbers specifically tonight at the press conference. They did confirm 64 people on the flight and 4 crew members. So we just don't know yet what the final numbers are. I think she still called it a rescue operation. So yeah, I think we'll find out more tomorrow. They'll be out there all night for sure.
Yeah, they're going to be out there all night for sure. So, what do we got? I'm seeing if there's any other additional information. We might be signing off, folks. Only because it just looks like there's nothing else really. There's you can look at screens, you can listen to talking heads, but yeah, I don't think we're going to get any additional information to light with an additional press conference. So We'll probably be back. Oh yeah, we'll definitely be back, but we'll be back probably tomorrow.
There are police blocking.
Let's listen to
entrances,
here
so
for a
you
second.
cannot, enter the airport property. I drove all the way around over by Joint Base Anacostia Bowling and Blue Plains, and any entrance to where you would possibly get close to the river where the plane and helicopter sadly went down, you can't get in there. So basically, this is probably for right now, besides Gravelly Point, if you're familiar with Gravelly Point, the best vantage point to see the work that is being done by hundreds, no doubt hundreds of first responders on the water, on the shore, in the air, as they ideally recover survivors. But as we've been talking about, the conditions are not like they were several days ago, but they are brutal, and it's just pretty awful. And when I was here about 2 hours ago, there were dozens of people just from the community who wanted to come get close. And I mentioned some were praying, and others just, when they were leaving, had their heads down, but they came here because they were interested in seeing what was going on. There aren't many just bystanders out here now. Just us as reporters, and you see, the boats on the water, and taking advantage of the docks here to stop exchange crews and head back out again, guys.
Bob, there's a lot that makes this search and rescue very difficult, and obviously the timing of this tragic and horrible incident definitely is making it even tougher for those first responders. 300 first responders, according to the officials that we just heard from, who are out there searching through 8 feet of water. But again, we want to reiterate, there are divers in both aircraft, inside the helicopter and inside the American Airlines flight 5342. Those divers are searching those aircraft. They are in the water at this hour. And Sharon, they need some light.
Yeah, they do. And the Potomac River on average is about 24 feet deep. So there's a wide area to search. Dark conditions. Let's go over to Mike Thomas, because Mike, they could use some light. Sadly, it's 1:30 in the morning right now. Light is 5 hours away?
Yeah, well, light's probably and what we call civil twilight, which is where it starts to get bright enough that you can actually see what you're doing outside, right? That doesn't occur until 6:47. So unfortunately, we still have several more hours where they're working in darkness. Winds at this hour, not as bad, but occasionally we do still get some gusts up over 20, and that'll make the water choppy. That'll reduce visibility out there. Again, Sharon mentioned 24 feet on average Potomac River. That's from the mouth up to the north as it kind of runs up the Virginia-Maryland border, right around that Reagan National Airport area. The average is about what that gentleman from earlier spoke about 8 feet near Reagan National Airport. There is a shipping channel I'll show you in a minute where it is a little bit deeper, though it doesn't sound like they're searching in that particular channel. It sounds like it's in the shallower parts of the river there. 5-mile-per-hour winds at DC right now. That's at least a little bit beneficial. And if you notice the picture to the north and west, there is still some ice on the river. Now, it's mostly in the shallows closer to the shoreline, but Bob mentioned we had a 60-degree day today, 64 at Reagan National this afternoon. As that ice starts to thaw and melt, water does not change its temperature nearly as fast. We could have 60 for a couple more days, and water temperatures would struggle to make it much past 40 degrees for a few days yet. It takes a while for the water to respond to the air temperature. So unfortunately, water temperatures tonight, as you'll see in a moment, still down in the 30s. 45 degrees, that's the air temperature. So one good spot about the warm day is that the temperatures as of this moment, certainly not as cold as, say, had this happened this time last week when it would be absolutely awful. Those are water temperatures in the bay. Satellite can still pick those up, about 34, 35, and we're seeing that echoed in the Potomac River as well. There is a buoy not too far, kind of just to the north of Reagan National here, that is reading a temperature just updated about 20 minutes ago with 35.8 degrees. So the unfortunate reality is that according to the U.S. Search and Rescue Task Force website, in water temperatures like this, survivability is about 30 to 60 minutes. And of course, knowing that this crash happened hours ago, it really is going to be tough. I mean, we can always hope, right? And at this point, that's sort of what we have to do here. Reagan National Airport, again, just to the south. We have been showing this camera of the recording of the crash off the EarthCam located just off to the north and to the west of where the Lincoln Memorial was. It was tracking that flight as it came inbound to DCA, which was about to run or trying to land there on runway 33. That is this sort of diagonal runway that runs from northwest to southeast. Winds were coming out of the northwest. And of course, pilots will tell you they always like to land against the wind. It helps stabilize the aircraft as it comes in. Here's the river depth I wanted to mention. On the extreme eastern side, away from the airport, as far as away from the airport as you can do it, they have the shipping lane, which is where those big container ships will go on by. They keep it as far away from the airport intentionally, right? They don't want the planes flying and hitting any of the taller ships there. So 30 to 36 feet of depth there on the eastern flank. It's a pretty narrow shipping lane, though. They really stay confined to that eastern shore. It's in this area where they're likely doing most of the searching here. So kind of central and western portions of the river there. That's where the average depth 5 to 15 feet. And of course, we had the official earlier tell us that most of the rescue efforts are happening in about 8 feet of water at this time. So that's what's going on right around Reagan National weather-wise. That's where Bob was, right there at Dangerfield Island, looking north right at Reagan National Airport. And again, most of the crews he's looking at just off to the north and northeast of his position, guys. We'll send it back over to you. Again, sunrise and when we should start to see some daylight and hopefully get a little bit more answers. That comes up 6:47 for twilight and then 7:15 official sunrise here in Washington.
Mike, before you leave us, I do want to ask you this one quick question because we do have a new image from the crash scene that we want to show people. But this is a very important question: is for the rescuers tomorrow morning, the temps. What are they going to see at 7 a.m. in the morning, and how will conditions change? Obviously, the light will help, but as far as the weather and the forecast for tomorrow morning.
So winds not going to be nearly as rough tomorrow morning as they were today when we had those wind advisories. No advisories tomorrow. And temperatures still in the 40s, and they probably won't drop too much farther. But we're not expecting to get below freezing here in D.C. tonight. Maybe upper 30s, but certainly not going to be the coldest night we've had this week. So a little bit of a benefit there. Still, though, we're talking about air temperatures in the 30s. They're suffering through pretty tough conditions out there.
All right, Mike, thank you. Of course, we know Reagan National Airport also shutting down operations till tomorrow at 11 a.m. At least that's the latest. We want to show you. This is obviously very disturbing for all of us. But this is the first image we are getting from Getty Images of this plane crash. Wow.
You see the wreckage there.
I mean, they say when this collision happened, this mid-air collision happened between this regional jet coming from Wichita, Kansas to DCA and this U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. Sadly, many people had reported that they saw this plane kind of go into different pieces throughout the waters there. And you can see that damage to that plane. It's just a stunning sight.
And we will see more in the light of day. But again, this is the first image, an up close image for us to take a look at that wreckage in the Potomac. You see the airport, Reagan National in the background, and you see a boat that is right there. Again, first responders say that divers are in the water. They are, we believe they are in the aircraft, both of them. We do not see the helicopter, but from that image that you're seeing right there, we can see the wing and we can see the wreckage there. And that is something else to see. We knew that we possibly see something like that, but to actually lay eyes on it, that is tough to see.
Yeah, and no doubt. I mean, listen, our hearts, our thoughts right now are with the families, both in Wichita, Kansas, and the ones that are here. We are told some families are here, some are trying to desperately get here, some are depending on us and DC officials to get them the information that they need. Again, Mayor Bowser, as of just a few moments ago, said this is a rescue operation. We have not heard of anyone surviving this crash yet. We are hoping that we do get that news. But again, that first image from Getty Images of this plane crash, something we haven't seen in this region for decades. We saw earlier, kind of in the distance, the plane crash where you can kind of see that fireball in the
Yeah.
sky. But this certainly gives us a much more sobering image.
And it also shows us what those first responders are dealing with. That is a little bit of light that we're seeing there to show us that image, but they are trying to light up that area as much as possible. But as Chief Donnelly said from Fire and EMS, they're dealing with a black spot here. That is the Potomac River at this hour, that they don't have a lot of lights that will be able to show, exactly, right up on top of, whatever they're trying to search or whatever like that. And it's the lighting is obviously an issue. Let's get to Josh Rosenthal as we've got our reporters spread out over that area right now. Josh, what are you seeing?
Oh, Kenneth and Trent, I'm standing at the intersection of S and Half Streets Southwest. To give you an idea of where that is, you've got Nats Park to my right, behind me, Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, and down this way is what we believe to be a command center of sorts, certainly a staging area. I say that for a few reasons. There is water access down there. By the way, in relation to the airport, we're across the Potomac and up the Anacostia just a little bit. We've seen a tremendous amount of emergency personnel coming and going from this point for the past couple hours that we've been standing out here now. We saw what we believe to be a DC police helicopter land down there not too long ago. We know there is a helipad down there. Also, as you see here, this is fire equipment and personnel trying to make their way down there. We've seen quite a few ambulances go down there, also fire trucks, police cruisers, and police SUVs. What exactly they're doing down there, all this emergency personnel, what exactly they're preparing to do, it's tough to know from our vantage point. However, I can tell you it is a tremendous amount of personnel that's just down there. The street, it's a dead end, only about a block down in that direction. Of course, we can't go down there. We're staying behind the police tape, but there is a lot of activity here. As far as this general area goes, obviously it's pretty quiet. It's in the wee hours of the morning here. However, many of these streets are shut down to traffic. The cars that are coming through are either emergency personnel, or occasionally you see people who live here come by. For instance, this car might be someone along those lines. And we've seen quite a few people approach police, oftentimes trying to get into their buildings or their parking garages, and we're seeing them being turned away and told to park on the street, do whatever they have to do. But this area, despite being, a decent clip from the airport, again, across the Potomac and up the Anacostia a little bit, it is pretty much being shut down, the people who are coming and going. But for hours now, we've been seeing a lot of this equipment, heavy equipment being staged, coming in, parking. Clearly, this is a major activity site for some of these emergency responders who are working extremely hard this morning and taking part in this rescue mission. Kenneth and Trent.
It is a massive operation. Josh Rosenthal, thank you. And we know that according to those officials who gave that update moments ago, that they are operating under unified command. The mutual aid agreement is underway right now, where it is all hands on deck here in the DMV. Federal, state, local authorities, first responders are all out there helping. A number of boats in the water, along with 300 responders.
Yeah, and listen, there are a lot of questions as to how this could happen. I think that's the biggest question that people are wondering, how this could have happened, how many air traffic controllers were listening to this when it happened, who had the wrong altitude, what went wrong. All of that is part of the investigation by the NTSB, the FAA.
Clearly the chopper's fault.
It could take years till we get exactly all the answers. But right
We
now,
trying to
I
fool
think the
people.
focus
We know it's the
is on the
helicopter
people on
who
board. We
crashed
don't know
that plane.
who was on board. We just know that it was
Even Trump
64
said that.
people on that plane and 3 people on that helicopter. Imagine the families that are just desperate for answers. I can imagine the anxiety out there. Just as someone who's reporting on this, sadly, I feel, Kenneth, as the hours go by, this is going to get harder and harder to report on. But as we've talked about in our reporting over the last couple of years, I mean, we've seen these close calls at Reagan National for some time, and it's been a point of contention for a lot of people.
All right, so we switched the feeds here, folks. That's pretty much all the additional information that we got. No survivors. What else do we have here, Magnolia?
Yeah, we don't have any information yet on the victims. We just know how many people were on each aircraft. So this is a live feed from Fox 5 Skycam. They'll be there all night, I think.
I mean, I was hoping that they would pull somebody out, you know?
Yeah.
Alive. That's what I was hoping for, man. I was sitting here waiting for them to pull people out.
Yeah. And there were reports earlier from NBC they had on their website that 4 people had been rescued and taken to the hospital. So, you know, we were hopeful for a little bit that there might even be more survivors. But then it turned out that that was inaccurate. So as far as we know, there aren't any survivors.
Either on the helicopter either. But I mean, knowing the information that we've been given thus far, and it appears I would say this is the chopper's fault. What would you think?
Well, yeah, it flew right into the plane. I think that's indisputable. So
it flew
something happened with that helicopter.
Yeah.
It came up behind the plane. So, you know, that's like
training mission. They were on a training mission.
It's like if someone rear ends you when you're driving, it's their fault, right? So I think it'll be their fault, but we don't really know what happened. Allegedly, they said that they saw the plane. They acknowledged that they saw the plane and that they needed to keep a distance from the plane. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild too. Although somebody's gonna have to explain something. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow morning when it's light. We'll get probably more press conferences, more daytime footage to see. But man, look at that sea of red. It's been a long time since I've seen this many law enforcement. There are hundreds there.
Oh,
Hundreds.
Yeah. And they're still there.
All right, folks. So we're signing off for the night. We'll be back first thing. Definitely be monitoring, and if anything breaks, we'll come and break it. But it just seems like they're just going to be, you know, they got what, 4 hours, 5 hours of light, long night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cold out there, icy water. Oh man, terrifying. Our thoughts and prayers are with every single victim's family, victims, first responders, law enforcement, personnel, everybody out there. Tough day in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It really is.
All right, we'll be back later on this morning. Have a
Yeah, that's just another grim indicator of what they're preparing for the absolute worst. And that is they have set up a site at the helipad where the DC helicopter is stationed right near Audi Field, right in between Audi Field and Nats Park. And they are preparing that location to receive multiple bodies. The DC officer, the chief medical examiner, I'm told, is preparing to receive more bodies than that office has ever seen, and more than have been recovered since the Air Florida crash decades ago. So just one more grim indicator of the tragic nature of what happened here last night and what will continue to evolve. Once the sun comes up and it starts making the search, rescue, recovery operation much easier because of daylight. One can only imagine what this area is going to actually look like when the sun comes up.
a tragedy, indeed, and the search will continue. We heard the chief say that search will continue. He did not give a time that they would cut off. Their goal here is recovery.
64 passengers aboard the American Eagle flight and 3 military personnel on the Black Hawk helicopter.
To give you a little more perspective on the plane itself, that American Airlines flight, Ted Oberg shows us exactly the scope of the plane and more about how many passengers were on board. Ted?
I just want to reset a couple things. Remember, this is a CRJ 700. It's 71 people maximum on board this plane. It's about 105 feet long, 76 feet wide, but inside that cabin, only 6 feet tall. 64 people were on board that plane this evening, just before 9 o'clock, as it made this landing into Reagan Airport, including 4 crew members. This is what it looks like inside. 2 exits up front, 2 exits over the wings, but we believe this plane broke in half as it hit the water, or maybe slightly before. The investigation will reveal that. This is the Black Hawk helicopter, or a model of the Black Hawk helicopter that flies out of Fort Belvoir on that training mission tonight. The Army confirming for us there are 3 crew members on board. This a map of where all of this happened, and I want to point out just a couple things here. This is the runway at Reagan Airport. This is the Virginia side. Here is Joint Base Anacostia Bolling. We believe the wreckage is somewhere here, just on final approach to Reagan Airport. This is a marina, the Capitol Cove Marina, closest to the wreckage site. But we're told that this marina was iced over tonight, and that fire crews and police rescue crews could not get their boats immediately into this marina as quickly as they wanted to because of the ice. Of course, all of that very interesting because of the issues the DC Fire Department is having with their main icebreaker, the John Glenn, which has been in dry dock for some time. That's just one piece of this puzzle. Certainly not the priority, but it did hamper some of the efforts. Here is a picture from a News 4 viewer of what they were able to see of this scene, and this is before many of the boats got there. And what you can see here is just a piece of the wreckage. I realize that on screen it's not terribly good, but it's not terribly clear from where we are. It was taken from some distance. But what it does point out is that this plane is not in that water, that 7 feet of water intact. That we have been told from sources who have seen the plane that it is broken up in the water. There are parts of this plane that are still together, but that many pieces of it are small and may have disintegrated on impact into the water. Obviously, daylight will tell us a lot more about that, but this is sort of what that scene looked like shortly after it happened, as fire crews and police crews and rescue crews tried to get there. And as we pointed out, sort of an all hands on deck, Sean, and as even a dinner yacht was commandeered to try and rescue people from all of this. This is what we were talking about how busy Reagan's runway is, one of the busiest runways in all the nation. This is Reagan's main runway here, busier than runways at Los Angeles Airport, Newark Airport, some Chicago airports. It points out that this is a very, very thin slice of airspace that all of the people flying in and out of DC and all of those military aircraft that we see all the time flying over us have to navigate. As they were fighting the congressional push to get more flights into Reagan this fall, the Metropolitan Airport authorities said that Reagan has a very narrow, restricted corridor for takeoffs and landings. Pilots routinely rate Reagan Airport among the nation's most challenging. And that just points out how difficult it is to fly in and out in a good condition, let alone this mishap here, that someone in the wrong place at the wrong time. What we do know about this flight from Wichita, by the way, that had only been flying into Reagan for about a year. It was one of the flights that was added after some pressure from Congress people to get that flight added, but it had only been flying into Reagan for about a year into this very, very crowded space.
Thank you, Ted. Yeah, and of course, someone who could speak to that busyness and how it can be problematic for some pilots who have had that experience is our Adam Tuss.
Adam is live for us right now at Reagan National. Adam, what can you tell us? What's the latest out there?
Sean and I, we're trying to track down some of the family members who are still here at the airport. You can see that the American Red Cross is now on the scene. We've seen chaplains come here from Montgomery County. People being brought in to counsel these families. The TSA, Metropolitan Washington Airport's police are kind of guarding us away from where these families have been taken. We're told that they've been taken to the American Airlines Admirals Club, where you can imagine that they are being counseled right now. They're being talked to get through this moment. They're hearing everything just like we're hearing everything in real time. And they're being talked to at this point in time. I was talking to some airport officials, some sources of mine. They actually train for this. You never want to get to this scene, but you train for this. And again, we're being moved here by airport police guys. So we'll get back to you in just a second after we can get back down to our live shot position. Thanks, guys.
Certainly appreciate that, Adam. All right, certainly we know it's a fluid situation out there at the airport. We saw the Red Cross aid truck, which we know the Red Cross is always called in to help out in situations like this.
Let's go to Juliana Valencia, who is at Reagan National Airport now. She is arriving on the scene, taking over for Walter Morris. All our crews have been out working through the night, trying to get more information. Juliana, what can you tell us?
Hey there, An and Sean. So, before I go over the press conference, because we got here just before the press conference started, I want to give you more of a human perspective of what it was just like getting to this point, the mood. So, obviously this is a major story, national, international story. So as we arrive here, there are so many crews, and our local agencies are doing their best to kind of navigate. And so we're able to park up a little bit closer. And as we are there, there's one of the local airline crews, and you can see that it has been a heavy day for him. He talked about how he has seen several people crying, and you can see him, he takes a deep breath, and we're just trying to give him support, and we park and we come in here. And obviously Mayor Bowser was joined by several officials. We had those two senators from Kansas who were here, everyone expressing their condolences. As we've been saying, we know that 64 passengers were on board that plane. We had 4 crew members, 60 passengers. That hotline number from American Airlines is available for families to contact. We know the GO team from American Airlines is on their way, and I'm going to go over some more notes here from that news conference. So we know here in Terminal 1 that there are no more flights. No more flights will be leaving out of DC at least until 11 a.m. this morning. All the flights that were arriving last night, they were diverted to Dulles. Metro extended their hours in order to help those passengers get to where they needed to go. Chief Donnelly was saying that there was about 300 responders working, and the whole search and recovery effort is in the water. Nothing is on land. He talked about how the conditions for the responders are rough. He said it's cold, it's windy, making the operation challenging. He had said that there were divers in both aircrafts, looking through the aircrafts, trying to find survivors. We also heard from the chief of MWA, and he says he was talking about just kind of the response. And then, of course, Senators Moran and Marshall, they pointed out that this Wichita flight, it's a nonstop flight that's only been in service for about a year. And they were talking about how they definitely feel that how tight-knit the community is, and how people are going to know people who are on that flight, and just kind of reiterating what a hard and heavy day this is. And they were saying, while this is professional, it's also very personal to them. So you could tell it was just a difficult moment for them as well. Just going through here these notes, and Sean, to kind of share more with you. There were 19 flights that were diverted overnight to Dulles that were headed to DCA. And, we did hear from other officials who are emphasizing the importance of letting first responders do their work, and to allow them to keep working on the investigation. I know a lot of people have questions about survivors, the rescue operations, and they said right now they have personnel in the water. They're trying to do their best, and they were going to give updates as they can. We do expect to have another update some point early in the morning. But yeah, no, this is just a very tough situation here, just to be going through this. I know all of you have been working overnight. We're just getting here. But again, in Terminal 1 here with the latest updates. Again, though, just a very, very heavy day. Back to you.
A heavy day indeed. Juliana Valencia, thank you. Just a reminder for anyone watching right now, Reagan National Airport is not expected to open up again until 11 a.m., but you might want to check if you have a flight out today before heading to the airport.
Let's check in with Joseph Olmo now, who is at Haynes Point, and he has been on the scene for hours now. Joseph, what's the latest from where you are?
You know, I have been here for hours, and there's such an eerie silence here along the Potomac River, even though what's happening behind me is the biggest story in the world right now. Everybody's talking about it. You could hear a pin drop out here right now. As I step out of the way, the big patch of red flashing emergency lights that you see, that is the actual airport. Everything you see there is up on land. But as our photojournalist Brooks Merriweather starts to pan to the left here, all of the other separate pockets of emergency lights that you see, the flashing lights, those are boats and divers out on the water doing what is arguably the hardest job out there, diving through icy Potomac River water, cold Potomac River water, and murky Potomac River water. And to compound all of that, it's happening in the darkness of the night. I know that our colleague Ted Oberg was able to confirm with some of his sources that at least a dozen bodies have been pulled from the wreckage here. We expect that number to go up.
They not DEI divers, right? So they should be able to get the job done, right?
When Mayor Bowser was pressed on how many people have been rescued, if anybody's gone to the hospital, and anything to do with casualties here. Injuries or deaths, she declined to answer. Maybe we'll get some more information throughout the course of the day. While many people are sleeping in DC, Maryland, and Virginia right now, there are first responders, frontline heroes, like Juliana said, about 300 of them on the cold waters of the Potomac, working to find the people who were not just on this American Airlines flight, but also the service members who were on this military helicopter that collided with the American Airlines flight as it was just seconds, literally seconds away from landing. In aviation, it's called final approach, when you're lined up with the runway and you're about to land. And this plane certainly was lined up with the runway, and you could have counted to probably 10 or 15, and that plane would have been on the ground. And unfortunately, we know what happened. But that is the latest out here. The Potomac River is just lit up in red, white, and blue flashing emergency lights this morning as we continue to cover this story that has just came at us like a curveball. Adam Tuss brought up something earlier this evening. You know, the airports prepare for stuff like this. They do have safety trainings that they go through. If you don't know, most airports, at least the ones that we cover, they all have their own fire and EMS departments. It's not just, you know, other neighboring jurisdictions that come to help out. There is a Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, which covers Dulles and DCA, fire and EMS department, and a police department. And they have trainings, and they bring in other partners on these trainings so that way they can be as ready as possible for something like this. So they're out there doing the work. Actually, Brooks just saw another boat, looks to be a rescue boat here, headed out to one of the pockets of emergency lights that we see. Unfortunately, it is just so dark out here that our cameras can zoom into those lights, but you really can't see what they're doing because it's just grainy and it is dark. But we have seen numerous boats coming from the Navy Yard area, jetting out to the middle of the Potomac River, right by the Woodrow Wilson Bridge area, if you know what we're talking about, and then coming back. But this is the scene out here, and my guess is that it's going to be like this for quite some time. You had 60 passengers on that American Airlines flight and 4 crew members who were in charge, 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants. And so far, according to our sources, only about a dozen bodies or so have been recovered. So we do have a long ways to go here, and we're going to be here for every moment of it as we all soak in this horrible tragedy that you never want to get the call about. None of us want to get this call in the news business, but we're going to be here for the community as we continue to cover what's unfolding here along the Potomac River.
All right, Joseph Olmo live for us. Joseph, thanks so much for setting the scene there and describing what you've noticed over the last several hours. And it certainly resonates with us to know how many people were on that plane, the 3 military personnel on the helicopter, and the massive recovery effort underway by first responders.
Speaking of those first responders and that massive recovery effort, just a short time ago, we heard from DC Fire Chief John Donnelly, who spoke about the conditions that these responders are facing. Let's listen in.
At 8:58, the first units arrived on the scene and found an aircraft in the water and began rescue operations. This incident has grown. There's currently about 300 responders working. We have boats from all throughout the region, police and fire boats. We have a mutual aid agreement in Washington, D.C., the National Capital Region Mutual Aid Agreement administered by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and we're all operating under that. We're operating under a unified command. Everybody's together. So we also have requested state police helicopters from Maryland, and the Coast Guard helicopter is working. So this is a state and federal response as well. U.S. Coast Guard's got some boats in the water as well. So it's a highly complex operation. The conditions out there are extremely rough for the responders. It's cold. They're dealing with relatively windy conditions. Wind is hard out on the river. So they're out there working. We're doing everything we can to keep them safe.
And that is a live look right there at the more than 300 first responders who have gathered, who have been out here now for more than 5 hours, conducting what we now know to be a recovery mission, searching for the bodies of the 67 people aboard those 2 different aircrafts, that Black Hawk helicopter and that American Airlines plane.
Right now, we know about 12 bodies have been recovered, and we have reporters who've been on the scene. Mark Seagrave saying that the DC Medical Examiner's Office is setting up a site at the DC Police helipad site to recover more bodies than it has had to deal with since the Air Florida crash in 1982. It is a grim reminder of the severity of the situation and how much more work has to be done tonight.
Inside Reagan National tonight, we have learned that the families who are loved ones or friends who were waiting for people who were on that flight from Wichita have gathered in the lounge, the American Airlines lounge. And Joseph pointed out, they're getting the information just like we are in real time tonight. I can't begin to imagine what they must be going through as they wait for word about their loved ones.
And that must be the hardest part. And our hearts break for these families and the crew members who were on this flight, what should have been an easy routine flight from Wichita, Kansas, nonstop to Reagan National Airport, which we've been talking about is such a busy airport. This airport sees so many flights in and out. One of the senators talking about the fact that it's DC. This is a seat of power. There's so much action going on right here. And that this operation is personal for him because he's going to know the families who are on board that flight and how sad that is for him and for this community. We don't know who was on the flight. There could be people who were from DC as well coming home.
Absolutely. Earlier this evening, the CEO of American Airlines, Robert Isom, released a statement talking about this horrific tragedy. Let's take a listen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Isom, the CEO of American Airlines. I want to brief you on a serious accident that occurred involving an American Eagle aircraft. The aircraft was operated by PSA Airlines, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of American Airlines. First and most importantly, I'd like to express our deep sorrow about these events. This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones. I know that there are many questions, and at this early stage, I'll not be able to answer all of them, but I do want to share the information I have at this time. American Eagle Flight 5342, operated by PSA Airlines, a CRJ-700 aircraft traveling from Wichita, Kansas to Washington Reagan National Airport, has been involved in an accident near Washington, D.C. It appears to have collided with a military aircraft on approach. Flight 5342 was under the command of 4 crew members and carried 60 passengers for a total of 64 people on board. We are actively working with local, state, and federal authorities on emergency response efforts, and the American Airlines care team has been activated to assist our passengers and their families. We're cooperating fully with the National Transportation Safety Board in its investigation and will continue to provide all the information we can. Our cooperation is without pause, and we want to learn everything we can about today's events. That work will take time, but anything we can do now, we're doing. And right now, that means focusing on taking care of all passengers and crew involved, as well as their families. Members of our GO team will be on their way to Washington, D.C., and I'll be heading there shortly as well. We know that many people will be concerned for the welfare of their loved ones, and we've set up a special helpline friends and family can call at 1-800-679-8215. That's 1-800-679-8215. If you believe you've had friends or family on board American Eagle Flight 5342. We understand and appreciate that people are eager for information. Please know that we'll continue to share accurate and timely information as soon as we can, but anything we must report must be accurate. We owe that to everyone involved. Our team of highly trained professionals will be working around the clock to support our passengers, crew, and their families however we can, and we'll update you as soon as we can. Thank you.
And you were just listening to American Airlines CEO. They're talking about this horrific tragedy and what they're doing. What she said the most important thing was to support the families who were on board, the families who were waiting for word about their loved ones who were on board that flight tonight.
Mayor Muriel Bowser started off a press conference a little earlier in the evening to talk about the latest updates on what was unfolding in the investigation. And one of the things she did was express sorrow for these families.
Yeah, I want to point your attention over here. We're on Dangerfield Island. This is the Washington Sailing Marina on the Virginia side of the river across from Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. And what you're seeing right now, we showed this a little earlier, but the search mission has now shifted to this side of the river. All evening long, the search effort has been on the side of the river closest to Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, where the plane and the wreckage of the helicopter are located. But in the past 30 minutes or so, we've seen the helicopter sweep this side of the river along Dangerfield Island, and now we're seeing multiple boats come into this area doing a very slow, methodical search of this shoreline. And I can tell you, we're in the dark here. We're not using all of our lights because Park Police came up to us and asked us to turn our lights down because our light was reflecting water and was hampering their ability to search this shoreline. And they were actually searching right in this marina where we were standing, right on these floating docks. They were going up and down each one of these docks, searching here. And you can see now more and more boats coming to this side of the river. Again, as sources told me earlier this evening, that plane split in two. It is in about 7 feet of water, again, just off the shoreline of Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. Divers have made their way into both now the plane and the helicopter. Originally, the helicopter was not stable enough for divers to get in, but you heard Chief Donnelly say during the press conference that now divers have also made their way inside of the helicopter. We don't have any more information other than that, but again, you see multiple boats now sweeping this side of the Potomac River. I can also tell you Going along with what Ted Oberg has been reporting about the recoveries of bodies that sources have told me that the DC Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is setting up a site along the river in southwest near Audi Field, where a DC helicopter is stationed for a recovery site for what they are describing as possibly the largest recovery of bodies since the Air Florida tragedy, where more than 70 people perished in a plane crash in the Potomac River not far from this site. And if you go back to the 1950s, there was another mid-air collision right almost in this exact same spot that had numerous fatalities as well. It was on this side of the river rather than the far side of the river. But again, you can see these crews now searching underneath these piers with their lights, looking for any sign of either survivors or bodies that they might find on either side of the river. So just a very, very tragic scene here. I will say, listening to the press conference,
that was Mark Seagraves earlier this evening talking about the recovery efforts there on the water. The divers from DC Fire and EMS and other jurisdictions have been able to access some of the wreckage. At this point, we know about 12 bodies have been recovered, and officials are saying that number is expected to grow. We will, of course, continue to stay on top of that part of the story for you this evening.
One of the things that Mark mentioned in his report there was close calls that have happened there over the last few years at Reagan National. And no doubt that will come up as the investigation continues, because there are many questions tonight about how this could have possibly happened. We also heard from the senators from Wichita talking about how they had lobbied to add these extra flights. And we know that there were members of the Virginia congressional delegation who opposed them. So I'm going to guess that maybe eventually they may look back and rethink or take a closer look to see if that decision, had anything to do with this. Certainly, we're still working to get more details, and we will keep you posted as we get more information on that.
So many factors to consider in the investigation. You're talking about the flights coming in. They're also going to be talking about the flight from Wichita, Kansas, and the Black Hawk military helicopter that was coming from Fort Belvoir on a training flight. Earlier, we were talking about Mayor Bowser and the response she had when she was briefing reporters. Let's listen into that.
So certainly I speak for the people of Washington, 700,000 of us who are extremely sorry for the families who are experiencing loss tonight. And so we want you to know that we will continue to work with American Airlines to share information as frequently as possible and make sure that we're getting accurate information out to the public. But my sorrow for all of the people and crew on the plane and our military personnel on the helicopter is very deep.
You were just listening to DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. She led the delegation of state, local, national leaders as they gave a press conference earlier today to update everybody on this tragic, tragic event.
We have Ted Oberg in the studio again to give us some context about what happened tonight and about the airport and the aircraft involved, Ted.
Yeah, I think let's sort of reset some of what we know about what tragically happened last night. This is the plane that was involved is a CRJ 700. If you've ever flown a regional jet, you likely know this kind of plane. It's about 100 feet long. Inside, it's only 6 feet tall. It's pretty cramped. 71 people maximum on board. Yesterday's 64 people, including 4 crew. There's the scene of what it looks like inside. 2 exits up front, 2 over the wings, nothing in the back. But as we've heard throughout this, we know that the plane broke either on impact with the helicopter or on impact with the water. And so the emergency exit's not necessarily crucial in this instance, unfortunately. A version of the Black Hawk that was involved, the UH-60, flying out of Fort Belvoir, through 3 crew members on board, according to the Army. This is where it happened. There you see just the edge of Reagan National Airport. We believe that the crash happened somewhere here, slightly closer to the DC side than the Virginia side, but we do know that debris and the search for victims of this collision has extended to both sides of the river. It's about a half-mile wide at this point, and the river has a current here. And so it makes the search all the more difficult when you have that much area in the dark, in the murky water, and the current flowing away from the airport. Here's some images of that plane. Incredible views in the darkness. Until sunup, this is going to be the best view of what we can see of this airplane. It's resting in the water upside down. This is the underside of the wing, a police boat in the background, and here you see the underside of the plane. And right there, if we can zoom in a little bit on that, you can see that is the inside of the aircraft. The other portion of it has separated away, either on impact with the helicopter or with the water. Here, another view, and there you can see again this plane split in half on impact. These are the underside of the wings and just crumpled wreckage inside. We do know the DC fire divers were able to get inside this plane and either walk or swim through the length of it, looking for any survivors. But as yesterday became today, the grim news was that bodies had been recovered. Here, one final view, and you can still see that plane resting half submerged but underwater in this plane. In the coming days, one of the stories that will emerge, remember, as planes fly down and land at Reagan Airport, this is some of the busiest airspace in the nation. This runway right here, the single busiest runway in the nation. Couple that with all of the helicopter traffic flying out of Joint Base Anacostia Bolling up near the Pentagon, it becomes a very crowded space, which is why Reagan Airport over the years has fought the expansion of more flights, and it will be a storyline in the coming days. Here is that runway, the busiest in the nation. The airport authority put that out as they were trying to fight the expansion of even more flights, and at the time they said this: Reagan Airport has a narrow, restricted corridor for takeoffs and landings. Pilots routinely rate this airport among the nation's most challenging. And certainly last night, we tragically saw some of the effect of that. We don't know why these aircraft collided, but it's certainly the airspace and questions surrounding just how busy it is will be one of the first ones we'll be asking in the coming days.
Indeed. All right. Ted Oberg. Ted, thank you for breaking that down for us.
We want to go to Ariel Hickson, who is in our newsroom right now, and she has more images and information from tonight's terrible accident near Reagan National Airport. Ariel?
That's right. We are getting these new images from Getty Images. They show us the closest picture that we've seen so far of the wreckage. You can take a look right now. You can see what appears to be part of the plane submerged underwater with search and rescue teams nearby. AP also released images with more up-close details of the scene. It's truly devastating to take a look at up close there. And, you know, Mark Seagraves, he has been told from fire officials that the plane is in 2 pieces. Absolutely devastating. Responses from politicians have been pouring in all night. Tonight, we got a statement from the White House saying, I have been truly and fully briefed on the terrible accident which just took place at Reagan National Airport. May God bless their souls. Thank you for the incredible work being done by our first responders. I am monitoring the situation and will provide more details as they arise. That's from President Trump. There's also a response from Vice President J.D. Vance saying, please say a prayer for everyone involved in the mid-air collision near Reagan Airport this evening. We're monitoring the situation, but for now, let's hope for the best. It's truly difficult to look at those photos up close and to see just how tragic this wreckage is. And politicians and I'm sure people throughout the world, throughout the country, are really thinking about those who were involved in this crash. Hearts are and thoughts are going out. Prayers are going out for those, the families, the crew, and passengers who were on that plane.
Absolutely. When you look at those images and realize the magnitude of what happened, even though you hear the facts, reporting the news.
To see it.
Yes. And the lives that we're talking about here, 64 people on board that plane and 3 members of the military on the Black Hawk helicopter.
To see that plane split in two and to be able to see inside when Ted sort of zoomed into the picture, like you were saying, when you talk about it, it's one thing, but to see it, it's the magnitude.
It takes your breath away.
It
Divers
absolutely
are
does.
going through that wreckage now, looking for people.
Absolutely. And then we also heard from our Mark Seagraves and also our Jackie Benson. DC's chief medical examiner is setting up what they're calling a staging area for the recovery of bodies, the largest that they have ever set up. This is at the DC Police helipad area in a hangar there. It's the largest staging area that they've had to set up since the Air Florida crash in 1982.
We've been also talking about how much evidence they have to recover in order to get to some of these answers that people are going to be looking for. Mark Miller, who is a professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, joins us now by phone. He teaches aviation accident investigation. Mark, thanks again for joining us.
No problem. Great to be with you. It's very sorry about this tragic event.
For sure. Can you give us an idea of what evidence, what are investigators going to be looking for first and foremost to try to get some answers as to how a military helicopter and a commercial jetliner collided midair?
Well, first, I think it's important that everybody knows that we owe it to the people who are going to pass away in this accident to find the exact answers and not any type of legal liability answers, but real answers that'll prevent such things from happening again. In this case, the military is actually going to play a bigger role. Usually accidents don't happen involving commercial aircraft in the United States military. This is a very rare event, but because it is, it'll get a powerful amount of investigation power behind it, which I think is real important. You'll get military investigators with all their expertise working hand in hand with the NTSB and their party system, particularly the FAA, the manufacturers, American Airlines, the United States Army. Everybody has a lot at stake in this to get to the bottom of what really happened. And some of the evidence that you're asking for, number one, even though we have all this great technology nowadays, and that's going to come into play, we still need to preserve the wreckage. In this case, you're describing the horrors of it, and they're still trying to do a recovery and rescue, and I understand that. But eventually this is going to turn into a full-fledged accident safety investigation. They need to secure the wreckage. They can't damage it. It's still valuable. Even though these two planes ran into each other and everybody thinks, yes, it was a collision. We know that. But it does pay dividends to look at every piece of wreckage. And then inside that wreckage has some very key components like flight data recorders and flight voice recorders that both aircraft should give up. And hopefully the beautiful thing is they're going to be intact because it fell right into the Potomac, which is cold temperatures and put out the fires hopefully real quickly. So hopefully the divers and the NTSB team can get a hold of that immediately and get to the bottom of what's on it. The other important piece of evidence for this one is going to be the air traffic control final report, which will come in the form of all the transcripts, detailed analysis of even the voices that are analyzed to see what was going on there, and was there a miscommunication of some nature. Every little rock is overturned in these investigations. Human factors are going to play a major role in what happened in the Army helicopter and what happened in that commercial aircraft. I believe you had a Navy pilot named Huddleston on earlier who did a masterful job of describing it from both roles, because he actually flew both types of aircraft into the same area.
And we're gonna talk to him in just a minute again, but let me ask you real quick, Mark. I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Does the what appears to be a large debris field, will that hamper the investigation? Will it make it harder? What are the challenges that the people there on the ground are going to face as they begin this this long process of trying to figure out what went wrong?
Okay, that is a really good question, and for the public to know. And there is the potential of some serious hazardous materials in that wreckage field in the Potomac. I don't know what the current's doing to it, but you have anything from excessive fuel in the water to, on military aircraft, who knows what's actually on board that helicopter, and the Pentagon will be in charge of that end of it. So the cooperation between the Army, the Pentagon, and the NTSB will be huge in securing that wreckage and making it perfectly safe for the investigators to get to. And I'm sure the emergency people that are actually searching right now are using the same protocol and are very cautious. And there's also one other important thing, and that is it's in the water and everything, but there's always the potential of bloodborne pathogens. And with composites nowadays, thank goodness it did fall in the water, because composites can put off some awful poisonous gases that can actually kill people. So it is a good thing that it is in the water, and as tragic as it is.
Right. We have one of our reporters saying that there were officials who described body parts being found in the water at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Mark Miller, we appreciate your insight tonight. We know this is going to be a long and grim task, but thank you for giving
And of course, we mentioned that in this conversation between the tower and the Black Hawk helicopter, there were a couple of messages that were sent. And now we're learning that Fox News is reporting that the Army helicopter did respond to the tower. In fact, I'm going to read you the quote here. Fox News is reporting that the Army helicopter did not respond to the tower when they asked if the helicopter had the regional jet in sight. In fact, it appears that they did respond, but on a different tower frequency. So they were on a tower frequency for helicopters. It appears that the tower controller was working both frequencies. And so as John Scott was kind of laying it out for us, and he's probably on this ATC transcript right now on this voice recording, getting the clarity on this. But we talked about this, and it's very imperative here, because we know there were two warnings, and maybe warning is too strong, but there were two directions given from the tower to the Black Hawk helicopters. And one of them was to pass behind. And the other one was, do you see the regional jet? And apparently we have been reporting, because that's the information we have, because that's the transcript, that the helicopter did not respond. And now Fox News is saying, getting information that they did respond, but it was on a different line. I want to bring John Scott back in. So John, if you didn't hear any of that, Fox now reporting it appears they did respond, but on a different tower frequency. They were on a frequency for helicopters, and it appears that the tower controller was working both frequencies, which is why in the conversation that you were listening to, you probably didn't hear a response, and nor did any of the pilots we talked to tonight.
Military aircraft use the UHF frequency primarily for their communications. Some of them are equipped with VHF frequencies, which are what jetliners and small general aviation aircraft like mine use. So it could be that he was on a helicopter frequency or he was on a UHF frequency and maybe talking to the tower, but just not getting the transmission through. That's all going to be part of the investigation.
Yeah, and speaking of the investigation, John, we have that recording now. I know you've probably heard this, but we're going to play it twice. This is the air traffic controller talking to the Black Hawk helicopter. We're going to play it for you a couple of times because it's quick. So listen into this, and then we'll bring John Scott back and get his take on this.
American 4782 by Bath, not for individual. American 472, Washington, 1 star, 3Q, 17. Did you see that? 472. American 3130, go around, turn left end 250, climb maintain 3000. Okay, left end 350, 3000, American 3130. American 4782 by Bath, not for individual. American 472, Washington, 1 star, 3Q, 17. Did you see that? 472. American 3130, go around, turn left end 250, climb maintain 3000. Okay, left end 350, 3000, American 3130.
Yeah, we kind of looped it a couple of times to hear there, but the thing that I'm caught by and in that, John, is where he says, "Did you see that?" And I don't know what he means. He said, "Did you see that?" It's surprising.
I believe that's another aircraft who saw the explosion. What happens, and I took a minute to listen to that exchange after the last time you and I spoke, and yes, he does first say to the chopper, he says, TAC 25, do you have the CRJ in sight? And then almost immediately he says, TAC 25, go behind, meaning fly behind the regional jet. And the collision takes place in less than 5 seconds after that last transmission, more like probably 3 seconds.
And so, and you didn't hear it, but it's, and again, and this is unclear, John, but it appears that the helicopter pilot or one of the helicopter pilots did respond, and it would have been, we presume, in that 5-second window before it hit the plane. It's
the instructions from the tower are so rapid fire. I mean, the ATC barely turns off his microphone after asking whether the CRJ is in sight, and then he gets back on virtually immediately. So there was not a lot of time for the chopper pilot to respond. And again, if he was on a different frequency or even on a different band, on a UHF band, it just, from everything that I'm hearing, it sounds like the two were not talking to one another. They just, the tower wasn't hearing whatever the chopper was saying.
Wow. Yeah. Great insight. John Scott, who's a pilot, been covering aviation analysis and disasters for a very long time. John, thank you. We appreciate your time. And just so we can kind of get a clear vision of this. So the helicopter hits the plane and they both go down. And now we know, and by the way, we're waiting for a news conference. You see in the right-hand side of the screen that was set for 12:30 East Coast time. It's now 12:52 and 24 seconds East Coast time. We haven't gotten any word about that news conference being moved up or back or canceled. So it still appears to.
It's all about the helicopter hitting the plane. Got to wait to see who was on that plane. Go figure. Follow me.